will you be sending or sharing this recording with us after?
Yes.
Thank you. Great.
You'll receive these slides as well as a recording. So welcome everybody to today's QuickBooks Online webinar with Kristen Cavitayo. Let me tell you just a little bit about SCORE New York City. So SCORE is a nonprofit resource partner of the Small Business Administration. Next slide, please. We're a national organization that's been around for 55 years. Here in the New York City chapter, we have about over 70 highly experienced mentors with a very wide range of backgrounds, including sales, marketing, web, like search engine optimization, finance, children's book publishing. So we have a very wide range of expertise. Every year we mentor about 6,000 small business clients. We do that in one-on-one business mentoring sessions that are absolutely free to you. And those mentoring sessions are typically an hour long, and you may meet with us as many times as you wish. We've had clients meeting with us, for 10 years. So we are really there to answer and help with your business questions, your business challenges. We're very specifically targeted to your needs. We typically would do about 140 face-to-face workshops each year. Due to COVID, we're doing those online. So you can always check out the latest webinars that are coming up on our website, newyorkcity.score.org. I should also mention, due to COVID, all of our business mentoring is being done via video right now. And with that, I'll turn things over to Kristen Cavitayo.
Oh, another person coming in the waiting room. Okay. Everybody, my name is Kristen Cavitayo, and I work for a firm called Bessie and Nagley. We are a 40-person accounting firm. I'm just going to mute all of you, to be honest. So I work for Bessie and Nagley. We are a 40-person accounting firm based out of Midtown Manhattan. We do everything related to accounting, tax, consulting, reviews and compilations, really bookkeeping, anything that you can think of related to accounting. But what sets us apart from other accounting firms is our accounting technology department. And our accounting technology department focuses primarily on QuickBooks. So what we do is anything from training and setup to conversions from other accounting softwares, implementations, custom reporting, app integration, really the whole gamut of things related to QuickBooks. Just to give you a little background on me, I started with the firm in 2012, and I started as a tax accountant and a bookkeeper. I am a CPA. And after, I guess it was about two, 3 years of doing tax and bookkeeping, I realized that taxes really were not my thing. And the financials really for a business, what meant more to the business owner throughout the year than just a tax return at the end of the year, than just handing your accountant a balance sheet and a profit and loss. And I was very interested in the process to get there. So helping people get set up, developing workflows and processing this information easily and efficiently. And I will say, and you will definitely feel it throughout this whole presentation, I am a QuickBooks nerd. It makes me very happy to get all this stuff set up. And it is a very, very user-friendly software. And what I want everyone to kind of think about today is, rather than looking at QuickBooks as an accounting software, because it is, think about it as really organizing your finances. So organizing the money that goes out of your bank and organizing the money that came in. If you think about it like that, it makes it a little bit easier to approach. When you think accounting and finance, it seems like a much more daunting task. So we're going to kind of make this as easy as we possibly can. And we're going to really just focus on recording our transactions. and categorizing what's actually happened. Okay, with that being said, we are all going to be in, I'm not sure why it's presenting from this screen and not my other one, but we're all going to be using a test drive file today. So QuickBooks has a sample file that's available for everybody to use online. And it just makes it a little bit easier if we're all looking at the same data versus setting up each of our own individual company files. So we're going to understand the process of how all of this works, and then you can apply it to your own business. Okay. I believe Kendra had sent you this link to qbo.intuit.com/redirect to test drive. You can click on the link that she has given you, or you can actually just Google. Let me just stop this presentation for a second and open up Google. And then we're going to talk about how to use Zoom first to ask questions and everything like that before we get into this. So you're just going to Google QBO test drive. If you do not click on the link, just QBO test drive. And it should be the first option you see when you Google QBO test drive. I'll give everybody a minute to get there. Once you click on it, you will be asked to confirm that you are not a robot. Don't believe any of you are, so we're going to go through this. My internet is going a little slow today, so you're going to bear with me on that. So when you go into the test drive file, what you're going to see is your dashboard, and it's going to say Craig's Design and Landscaping Services. Okay, I'm going to jump back into the PowerPoint for just 1 minute. We're going to talk about the chat and optimizing your screen. If you are using one screen, in Zoom, you should see a little green bar at the top that says who's sharing their screen. You should have it also right next to that, the view options, and select the options to exit full screen. This will make it easier for you to see what I'm doing on the Zoom window, and for you to follow along in your own test drive account. Throughout the presentation, I will stop and ask if anybody has questions. But if you do have any questions that come up, just select the option to use the chat. I have it open on a second window, so I will see the questions as they're coming in, and Kendra also monitors them as well, so I will not be missing them, hopefully. So you should see this under, there should be a little option for chat at the bottom of your window, or you can go to participants and then select the option to either raise hands or to chat there. Does anybody have any questions on that so far?
Not at all. I'm good. Thank you.
Sorry, I cannot find the QuickBooks.
Test drive link?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'll do for you is I'll just paste it in the chat, and then you can just use that link there.
Now, Kristen, the QuickBook text should be Craig Design and Landscaping?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I'm actually just going to close out of this PowerPoint now because my computer is going a little slow today. And we'll just get back into it to finish up in a little bit. Okay. Move you guys over to this side. Okay. So can everybody see my screen? Is this okay? Craig's Landscaping and Design. If I don't see anything,
Yes,
I'm assuming that we're okay. Okay. So we're first going to cover navigation, and then we're going to jump into banking and recording our bank transactions. So when you first log into your QuickBooks Online account, this is going to be the screen that you see. This is your dashboard. Along the top of the screen, you'll see sample company, which will say your company name when it is set up. My Experts, which is the Intuit support. One important thing to note about that is QuickBooks has very brilliantly set up a pro advisor network, which is outsourced support. So there are over 100,000 pro advisors all over the country who are certified in QuickBooks and are there to help you with any of your QuickBooks needs. QuickBooks, the QuickBooks support is, I mean, it's a support line, so it's somewhat limited. The Pro Advisor Network is made up of CPAs, bookkeepers, accountants, people who are really involved in this and on a day-to-day. Presty and Nagley, the company I work for, we are 40 people and 35 of which are certified in QuickBooks. So we are, you know, all pro advisors. If you look in New York City, if you search just pro advisors in the Manhattan area, I'm number 2. So you don't really need to look for that. Look for a pro advisor because now you guys have met me. Along the side, we have help, so you can search through the forums and blogs and different help pages related to QuickBooks here. The search icon, if at any point today you get a little lost, or I move past the transaction, or you recorded something that we haven't finished yet, if you click on this little search icon up at the top, you're going to see all of your previous recent transactions, anything that you had clicked into, anything that you had modified. You are also able to here search for anything in the file. You can search for anything on dollar amounts, dates, customers, vendors, transaction types, reports, anything like that. This search icon is a super helpful tool. Here we have notifications. And then your little gear icon is where all of your settings and everything live. Okay. And then over to the side here, if you have a pro advisor profile, or when you log into your file, it'll just be your Intuit account with your initial there. Okay. Now, along the left side of the screen, this is really where you're going to live. The left side of the screen are our different menus or centers and different ways of recording transactions. So this little new button here, if we click on that, these are all of our transaction types in QuickBooks. This is the fastest way to get to them. And in every transaction type in QuickBooks, or anything that you really do in QuickBooks, there's multiple ways to get there. So new is probably the easiest. And we have here listed, we have 4 columns: customers, vendors, employees, and other. So it's important to note terminology in QuickBooks. Anybody who you receive money from is considered a customer. Anybody who you pay money to is considered a vendor, other than your employees. Then you have under each of these columns, we'll go through other in just a minute. Under each of these columns, customers, vendors, and employees are the transaction types that are specific to those list types. So in QuickBooks, we send customers invoices and we receive bills from our vendors. Under customers, we also have the ability to receive payments, create estimates, credit memos, sales receipts, and other charges. And under vendors, we have the ability to record expenses, checks, bills, pay bills, and so on. Same thing with employees. You have the payroll and time activity. Then you have other. Other are transactions that don't necessarily correspond to any specific customer, vendor, or employee. So although customers are people who are individuals who you receive money from, or businesses that you receive money from, bank deposits might not only come from customers. So that's why it's under the other column. We'll get into that a little bit later in today's workshop, the specifics of bank deposits and why it's not linked directly to a customer. Transfers are transfers between maybe a checking and a savings account, a checking and a loan account, stuff like that. So no customer or vendor there. Journal entries. Now, journal entries are really what make up your whole accounting system. It's what what accounting is all based upon. And as I mentioned earlier, QuickBooks is not a software it's an accounting software, but it's not built for accountants. So behind every transaction that you record, there is a journal entry. You just don't see it. So for every check, there's a journal entry that lives in the background, every expense, bill, and so on. The journal entries will mainly be for your accountants in the QuickBooks software. You also have the ability to generate statements, adjust quantities of your inventory, and also pay down credit cards. I also will say there are multiple versions of QuickBooks Online. I guess I should have talked about this a little bit earlier, but let's just cover those before we get into all these different transaction types, because we are using the Plus version of QuickBooks, which has a little bit more to it than a couple of the other versions. So just to go through quickly, there are 4 different versions of QuickBooks Online. The first one is called Simple Start. Simple Start allows for one user to access the file at a time, allows for a connection to your bank, recording all of your bank transactions, checks, deposits, and so on, and the ability to invoice your customers. That is about, I believe it's $25 a month. Then you have Essentials. Essentials allows for 3 users to log into the file at one time, or 3 users to be set up in the file, I should say. And you are able to do everything that Simple Start does, and you're also able to manage your bills for your vendors, management of accounts payable, as well as additional reporting, filtering. Let's see what else is in Essentials. I believe there's a couple of different item types in Essentials that don't exist in Simple Start. And Essentials, I believe, is about $40 a month. Then you have the Plus version of QuickBooks, and that's the version that we're going to be working in today. And the Plus version of QuickBooks does everything that Simple Start and Essentials do, but it also has the ability to do class tracking, which is if you have, let's say you have multiple different departments of your business, or an example is nonprofits. They have 3 classes that they have to maintain all the time: administrative expenses, fundraising, and purchasing. If you have any breakdown of your expenses other than just the chart of accounts, income and expenses really would be what classes are for. They're another tag on your transaction. Also, they have locations in Plus, the ability for 5 users to be set up in the file, additional reporting, as well as the ability to create and manage budgets in QBO. And that one runs about $70 a month. With all of the, and there's also QuickBooks Online Advanced. That one is the largest one. It has the ability for 25 people to log into the file or be set up in the file. It has smart reporting. It has additional tags for customers and vendors, custom fields, more in the way of budgeting, customized user permissions, and things like that.
Kristen, a question from Lisa. What about the desktop QuickBooks? Can she use this desktop version for her Mac?
So this is the online version. All of the versions that we talked about, those 4 that I just mentioned, are all QuickBooks Online. These can be used, this program can be used on any computer, Mac or PC, a tablet, your phone, any of the above, because it's cloud-based. The desktop version of QuickBooks, that would be, you either purchase a PC version or a Mac version. I would recommend, if you are going with the PC version of QuickBooks, the desktop version of QuickBooks, unless you're going to Enterprise, which is the super package, if you will, of the QuickBooks software for desktop. If you're going for the Pro or Premier, I would recommend going with QuickBooks Online versus the desktop software. And the reason I say that is because Intuit is putting all of its resources into QuickBooks Online. All of the new updates, the app integrations, everything is really focused on QBO more so than the desktop. Another
Can I
benefit.
one thing, Kristen?
Yeah, sure.
I bought the QuickBooks desktop version for Mac a few years ago. I just couldn't figure out how to use it and didn't have time to figure it out. So I just haven't touched it. So that's why I was wondering whether I could use that or whether I now need to go to, online. I'm a small business really trying to expand, and I would rather not spend money
Mhm.
on online if I could get away with it. If it's really more important for me to use it, I will. I'm just trying to find out what you think, I can do.
So, the one thing with the desktop software, which you don't have to worry about with online, is support for within QuickBooks sunsets after 3 years. So if you, let's say you have the 2016 version of the desktop software, you would have to upgrade in order to do a lot of the stuff that we're doing today, or the first half of today, recording your bank transactions, because it doesn't allow that connection after 3 years.
Okay.
With QuickBooks Online, if you do not know what version to go with, I would always suggest starting with the lowest level. So start with Simple Start, and you can always upgrade. It's always a lot easier to upgrade than it ever is to downgrade. So I would suggest, if you do not know what version of QuickBooks to purchase, start with Simple Start. You can always add on in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I hope that answered your question too, Delilah. Just start with the Simple Start version, and you can always add in the future.
You know what happens is that I really like all the features of the current version, because those are part of my practices, such as the journaling.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's more concise, and it just brings it all together, and it would help me to be accountable. Because it's just convenient and efficient, but I don't need to share it because it's just me.
Yeah, so you do have the ability for journal entries, invoicing, the bank transactions, but really you're going to be missing with Simple Start is, do you record bills from vendors? Or is it mainly just kind of what happened in the bank already?
When you say record bills, what do you mean? Because I do have to data enter a service, and then I do print a bill, but it's generated from their data system. But I do submit invoices on a monthly basis.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you might want to go with the essentials if you're going to be recording bills. But let's go through the first half of today, because the first half is going to be recording bank transactions and what actually happened in our bank.
Oh, you meant bills like expenses?
Yes.
Oh,
Like bills,
yeah,
like
of
from
course.
our vendors. You record. So there's two different ways. So
Okay.
there are bills that you have paid already that are coming from your bank account. We are definitely recording those.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about with the essentials version is the bills that you haven't paid yet. So no money has moved from your account. So you'll have a bill that's due, but if you, let's say, hold on to a bill to a vendor for 30, 60, 90 days, you might want to record that in QuickBooks. But if your business is more, you receive the bill and pay it within, a week or two or whatever, it's a kind of a quick turnaround, then you don't necessarily need to have that in QuickBooks. You can just have that through the bank account. So that's why I say to start with Simple Start, because a lot of people just starting out don't necessarily need all the bills and the bill pay functionality.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense.
Okay. Repeat the cost for 1 and 2. So for a Simple Start, I believe it is about $20 a month, $25 a month maybe. And the Essentials version is $40 a month. As we're talking about these different versions of QuickBooks and the pricing, Presty and Nagley, we are pro advisors, but we're also Intuit resellers. So if anybody has not purchased QuickBooks yet and would like to purchase QuickBooks, let me know, because we are able to give you the best pricing on the market. We get currently the pricing is 50% off of the subscription for the first year, as well as a 30-day free trial. So if you are interested in that and would like to purchase QuickBooks, like this discount, just put your name in the chat and I'll send an email to everybody after the workshop. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? I'm sorry, your name and your email. I don't have your emails. I'm seeing the chats come up and people's names, and I don't have the email addresses associated.
So Christina, Andrew, so I don't pay bills through QuickBooks. I pay them through my bank account.
Mhm.
So when the feed comes from my bank, that's where I categorize them and code them. Is
Right.
that a good process?
Yes. Yep. And that's
Okay.
really where we're gonna, after we get through the navigation here, that's where we're gonna go. We're gonna go
Okay.
through our bank transactions and how to categorize them and record them in QuickBooks.
Okay, great. Okay.
All right. So we went through the new button. Here is your dashboard. I typically don't work from the dashboard. I like to go through the menus, but just to go over it. You're first going to see a setup guide. I'm going to hide this because we're going to go through each of these items together. You have the ability to go through different shortcuts and then your bank accounts that you have connected. We're going to go through banking in just a couple of minutes. That's probably one of the most important things to do in your QuickBooks file. You also have the business overview tab here, which is going to just give you a couple of different graphs, bar graphs, and analysis of your profit and loss and your sales and your expenses. You can get this information from your dashboard or going to reports. I personally like reports, but everybody has their own personal preferences once they're in the system. So continuing down the list along the left side menu, this left side menu is going to stay on the screen pretty much all the time. You can hide it by selecting these three little bars up here at the top next to where it says sample company, which would be your company name in the future. So under dashboard, we have banking. Banking is where we're going to connect our bank accounts to QuickBooks and categorize our transactions. We'll go there in just a couple of minutes. Then we have expenses. Expenses, again, is any money that you're paying to a vendor is going to be under expenses. So you have all expenses, checks, bills, bill payments. Vendor-related expenses are under this tab here, as well as your vendor list. Under sales here, you'll see all of your sales transactions, your invoices that are outstanding or invoices that you've just sent to customers, paid or outstanding. Your customer list, as well as your products and services that you sell. Projects, this is only available in the Plus version and the online advanced versions of QuickBooks Online. In addition to your customers, if you want to track specific projects for customers, there's an option to do that in Plus. Payroll. So payroll, you can do, Intuit does offer payroll. There are 3 different versions of QuickBooks Online Payroll as well. I'm not going to go through all of those, but just know that they do exist, and it's an additional fee to your QuickBooks subscription. But it does make it very nice and easy because you enter your employees' information in and you can run payroll directly from your QuickBooks file. Intuit also does, depending on what version you get, take the responsibility of paying your payroll taxes for you. Filing your quarterly tax returns, your annual tax returns, and preparing your W-2s. Next is reports. So QuickBooks, all of the QuickBooks files have about, I think it's 120 stock reports, all of which can be customized. So as we are tagging transactions from our bank account, as we are recording anything in the file at all, they automatically update all of your reports. You do not have to do anything in addition to have reports be updated other than just save a transaction. Taxes relate to sales tax and payroll tax. If you collect sales tax from your customers, they would live under this section. And if you pay payroll, any of your payroll tax filings, your payments, tax payments, things like that would all live here. Then you have mileage. Mileage would be if you are, a small business owner and you want to track the miles that you're traveling to go to clients to get bills back from clients, things like that. Accounting is going to be your chart of accounts and the ability to reconcile. So your chart of accounts is really your listing of categories of how you categorize your transactions. Chart of accounts, categories and accounts are interchangeable. Oftentimes in QuickBooks, there's one section that it's not, but 99% of the time, accounts and categories are mean the same thing in the QuickBooks file. Then you have Reconcile. So reconciling is the process of matching what's in your bank account is matched up with QuickBooks. It's just a confirmation at the end of each month. So when you get your bank statement, when you get your credit card statement, loans, any third-party statement, you want to reconcile and make sure that your records match their records. That's something we're going to go to after we go through the banking section. My Accountant. So up in the on this top menu bar where it says My Experts, that's QuickBooks Support. My Accountant, you have the ability to share your file directly with your accountant. Any version of QuickBooks allows you to invite 2 accountants to share the file with you. So if you have a bookkeeper and a tax accountant, or a pro advisor, and a tax accountant, an auditor, you have the ability to add them, and you can add them under My Accountant here, or under the ability to manage users. And you are also able to search the pro advisor directory from this button as well. In your actual files, in your own businesses, you're going to see another app, another item listed here, and it's going to say apps. So what Intuit has done is it's recognized that it is great at accounting software. They have built the largest accounting software, most popular accounting software in the small business market. I believe it has 80% market share, which is huge. And it is because it's very user-friendly and they know what they are good at. So what they've done is they opened up their whole back end, their API, to developers. And there's 1,400 applications that connect with QuickBooks to do things that QuickBooks is not, the best at. So maybe things like inventory management. If you have a warehouse that you're managing and you don't want to do that in your QuickBooks file, you can have another software do that management and talk to QuickBooks and feed data between the two. Things like time entry for your employees, approvals of bills, things like bill.com, CRMs. There's a whole bunch of different softwares out there. So I would encourage you, if QuickBooks doesn't do something out of the box that you want it to do, look through the App Store and see what's available out there. Some of the apps you'd have to pay for, some you don't, some you have to, there's a subscription with them. It's, it's specific to the individual apps. Does anybody have any questions on any of that before we go into banking? Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to select banking along this left side menu and select just the top one, banking. Now, the reason I start here, and I'm going to hide my left side menu just so that we can get more real estate on the screen. The reason I start with banking is if you record all transactions that happen in your bank account, all deposits, that means that all of your income, cash-wise, let me specify that, all of your income would be recorded, all of your contributions would be, as well as all of any loans or anything like that that you received. So if you record all of the deposits, you handled all of those things. Same thing on the money spent. So money that's coming out of your bank account, you would have all of your expenses that you've paid, all loan payments that you paid, credit cards, that have been paid, distributions that you have taken. So your business checking account is really the meat and potatoes of your business. This is where everything flows in and out of. And I say business checking, but I really mean, your checking account, if your business has any credit cards, things like that. So any account that your business has with a third-party financial institution. So checking accounts, savings account, credit card accounts, loan accounts, we want to record all of that in your QuickBooks file. 9 times out of 10, those payments, and you'll find where all of those other accounts are in your checking account, because your checking account, your business checking, is going to be paying your business credit card, your business loans, and things like that. So as you go through your checking, you'll start to uncover all of these other pieces of your financial framework. So up here at the top, we have listed 3 different accounts that are connected to the company file. We have a checking account, a savings, and a MasterCard. And to add an account, this is a sample file, so I can't actually add an account, but I'm going to just show you how to get there. We would select the option to link account. When you first click into this screen in your brand new company file, it's going to ask you to just add an account. But once they're already added, we would just simply click link account. And then QuickBooks is going to ask you to select the bank. So here are a list of popular ones, but there are thousands of banks that connect with QuickBooks. You know, credit card companies and whatnot. I can't think of one off of the top of my head that I know that does not connect, but you would select the bank account here. So let's say I have Chase. Once I select Chase, it's going to ask me for my login credentials. So my online banking credentials, and then it's going to pull up all of the accounts that are associated with that login. And I only want to connect anything that's related to my business. Just for audit purposes, for tax purposes, and really anything like that, you do not want to have your personal expenses mixed with your business expenses. Although it does happen, I do understand in small business, it definitely happens a lot that you might use your personal account to pay for your business, but you really want to try to keep it as separate as you possibly can. And the accounts that you connect to your file should really only be your business checking accounts. Once you connect your bank, it is also very important to know QuickBooks is not moving any money around. QuickBooks can move money around for you, but those are additional services. Those would be things like Intuit payments or bill pay, things like that. QuickBooks here is literally just pulling data from your bank. It's pulling the dates of transactions, it's pulling the bank description and what was either spent or received. So the process of adding all these transactions from your bank becomes a lot easier with you not having to type up every single transaction. There's a less of a risk for any kind of transposition errors, wrong dollar amounts, anything like that. Does anybody have any questions on that so far? Beautiful. So just let's talk about what we're looking at here. So we have these 3 accounts that are connected. The top of each of these accounts show the balance that is in your bank account, when it was last updated, the balance that you have in QuickBooks, and the number of transactions you need to review to bring your QuickBooks balance to match your bank balance. Okay. There are a handful of reasons why these might not match even after you clear these 25 transactions. If you are actually if you're cutting checks from your QuickBooks file, if you record the check in QuickBooks and actually print it out, the bank, your books are going to know that that check exists, but the bank doesn't know until it's cashed. So that might be a reason for a discrepancy here. But if you're not cutting checks, if everything is really coming in and out of your bank account and that's how all the transactions get recorded, these should match. We keep going down. Oh, just a note here. It says updated moments ago. It shows you the last time it has made a connection with the bank, the last time it's talked to the bank account. If this says anything other than updated moments ago, over to the right of the screen, you can select the option to update. Just hit this button and it will refresh that information. So as we go further down, we also have 3 tabs here. We have for review, categorized, and excluded. So for review, these are the 25 transactions I have to review to bring my bank balance to match my QuickBooks balance, or vice versa, I should say. Once they are reviewed, they move to the categorized column. And then you have excluded. And 99% of the time, you should not have anything under excluded. Even if you have personal transactions coming out of your business account, you do not want to exclude them. You want to create an account, or you want to create an account called something like personal expenses or owner distribution, something like that. You do not want to exclude anything from your bank account unless it's a duplicate. Maybe you have another software feeding data into QuickBooks and there's duplicate transactions. That would be really the only reason to exclude, or maybe it's outside of a time frame. Any other all other transactions that are coming in, you want to have every dollar that came into your bank recorded and every dollar that's spent recorded as well. Okay. With that all being said, let's continue down the screen. And we're actually going to start adding transactions to our QuickBooks file. So as we scroll down, we want to make sure that everybody has this sorted by date. What you should see at the top is on November 14th, books by Bessie with uncategorized income for $55. Okay, I'll give everybody a second just to make sure. To add this transaction to QuickBooks, we want to click anywhere along this line, anywhere except the action column. So when we click into this transaction, we have the customer, the vendor or customer, so the payee, and the category. So what we want to look at here, or how we want to look at this, is we want to record who we've paid or who has paid us and categorize why. That is really all we are doing in our bank transactions here. So in this field where it says books by Bessie, I'm actually going to just remove that name, because what QuickBooks tries to do is it tries to help you. It's a smart software, so it starts learning your bank transactions, your credit card transactions, and things like that, and starts making like helpful kind of assumptions for you. So it recognized in the bank detail that it said books by Bessie. There's a customer set up or a vendor called books by Bessie, so it assumes that is the proper payee. We're going to mess with QuickBooks Head a little bit, and we're actually going to change that. So where it says select payee, we're going to just change it, and we're going to call it Bessie's Books. After we type in her name, or as soon as we begin typing in her name, you'll see this little pop-up up here where it says add Bessie's Books. We want to click anywhere in this box. So my internet's going a little slow today. So we'll have Bessie's Books as our name. This is our new name window. And then the type. QuickBooks is pretty smart, as I just mentioned, that it recognizes that this is money that's been received from Bessie's Books. So it's saying this is a customer, or it's assuming that it's a customer. You have this type here. If we select this little drop down, we have customers, vendors, and employees. We just have to tell QuickBooks what type of person is this, what relation they have to us. So we have Bessie's Books, and we're going to select customer as our type and go with the QuickBooks option. And then all of you can select save. I'm going to leave this window open for just a second, and I'm going to actually select the option to add details. So the name is the only information that is required to set up a customer. So I would recommend, just for a time-saving exercise, when you go through your bank transactions, just use the new name window, set up the name, set up the customer, set up the vendor, just use their name, select their type, and just select save. If you want to add more details to them, you can. There's nothing wrong with doing that in the banking section. It's just if you don't necessarily need them, you don't have to do it at this time. So we have Bessie's Books, and I'm going to select the option to add details. Now, this is our customer information window, our customer profile window. I will show you how to get back to this a little bit later because we can go to our sales section and to our customer list and modify this information once we have it set up. But from our new name window, this is our customer profile. The only information, again, that's required is the display name. Everything else is up to you if you want to put that information into QuickBooks or not. So you can assign it a company. If you have a contact there, first and last name, email addresses, actual billing and shipping addresses down here at the bottom. Notes about our customer, tax information if they are taxable and what their default sales tax code is. Payments and billing, how they prefer to get invoices or communication. Sorry, that's preferred delivery method. Preferred payment method would be how they prefer to pay you. The terms, if you have different terms for each of your vendors, you can select different, to your customers, you can select different terms. Language, you are able to send your invoices to your customers in a handful of different languages here. Attachments, I would recommend including an engagement letter, maybe a proposal, a contract, something like that. You can include that in with your customer profile. And then you have additional information like customer types. So if you want to classify your customers, if you deal, let's say, with wholesale and resale or retail, you can select those different customer types. It just helps for additional reporting later on. Does anybody have any questions on that so far?
Yes, I do. Question: if you do not have a customer that pops up when the transaction feed comes into QuickBooks and you know what it is, but you're okay without a customer name, what's the next recourse if that happens?
There's nothing wrong with not including a name. So in order to save this transaction, so I'm going to save this name here. So to save the transaction, what actually happened in our bank, you do not need to include anything here. So let's say you are in retail. Let's pretend you own a deli. Okay, you have all these customers coming in every day. You don't necessarily need to know the name of each of your customers. You're not going to have that in your QuickBooks file. It seems a bit ridiculous, to be honest. But if you wanted to include all of that, you can. What I would recommend, though, if you have money coming in from outside sources, things like Square or Shopify, a third-party processor other than Intuit, I would suggest creating something like Square Customer or Shopify Customer. And the only reason I would suggest that is Square and Shopify, or these different shopping carts, they do give you a report of what your sales were for a month. So it's just a good practice if you ever need to go back and reconcile the two. If something looks a little off on one system versus the other, it just is a good it's just a good practice to get into, just including just Square Customer with your transactions, just something that's generic. I would also say the same thing on the vendor side, because there are many instances where you do not need to include a vendor name, or
I was
you
going to
don't
ask
need.
that question too, about the vendor side also.
Yep. So there are things like when we go to restaurants, right? You don't need to have every restaurant you go to or on your business card or whatever included in your QuickBooks file. Your credit card statement is always going to have that information. You can always refer back to that.
Okay.
So you can create a vendor, a generic vendor, and call it restaurant.
Gotcha.
I would say the same thing for gas stations, taxis, parking garages. And I say this if you are not in those industries where you need to know that information. If, let's say, you are in like a wine distributor or something, and you're trying to get a client and you're spending money at their restaurant as like a promotional building business kind of thing, then you might want to include the name restaurant in your company file. But for most other businesses, an accounting firm, for example, I don't need all of the restaurants I've gone to in my QuickBooks file. Same things, gas stations, parking garages, and so on.
Well, I'm in home care business, so it's a service driven business. We don't have inventory, so it's about paying bills through the credit card and the bank feed, and receiving checks from our clients, which we do as income fee for service, something to that degree.
And I would imagine do you have another system that is maintaining your customers? Like, do you have like contracts with your customers? Yeah.
Yes, we do.
In that scenario, you do not need to have the name recorded in QuickBooks.
But I set up all of them in QuickBooks already. All my clients is already set up. So when the check comes in, at least I know we can link it to that particular customer. Yeah,
you absolutely can. You just don't necessarily have to. And it is a good practice. When you have two different systems maintaining information like this, especially financial information, you want to make sure that they both match up. Because if that's, and you have to decide which one is going to be your system of record. Which one do you rely on more? Do you rely more on the outside system where you're maintaining the billing and invoicing to those customers, or are you going to refer to the QuickBooks side of it, which is cash that's being actually received?
Got it.
Does anybody else have any other questions on the customers and setup? Okay.
Sorry, I got lost in the very beginning when you changed the name where it said Books by Bessie, and then you wanted to change it. So I haven't been able to get to any of these other images.
So where it says customer vendor, yours still says Books by Bessie?
Yes.
So what you want to do is just delete her name altogether, the whole thing, Books by Bessie, and start typing in Bessie's books.
Okay, so then I don't mean to take everybody else's time. It looks like I'm not even able to get there. Oh, am I lost?
Are you seeing the same screen?
I couldn't get as far as your screens. If I just start with checking and then I see, yeah.
So you see this up at the top?
Okay, I see that. Yeah,
Okay. And then just scroll down just a little bit.
yeah,
And you should have your list here sorted by date. So the Books by
Yeah.
Bessie should be at the top.
yes.
Okay, then where you click anywhere along that line. And then this screen will open up. So are you seeing it more like this?
I saw it like that.
So if you click anywhere except for where it says action and add, so anywhere along this line, then you're going to have the ability to make modifications.
No, it's just showing me Books by Betsy. Checking shows this as Books by Betsy, and over on the right it says I could undo it.
Oh, because you're in categorized. Here, you're here. I'll show you. You're
Oh, for
under
review.
categorized.
Got it.
Yep,
Thank
so you
you.
clicked add. You clicked add rather than just selecting anywhere along the line. That's okay. That's totally fine. We're about to add this in just a second anyway.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I see another question. Can you transfer old expenses to one of these new general accounts? I'm not 100% sure I understand the question. Does that mean olds, like older this year from an older checking account? What is that? It's Kathy who asked the question.
Yeah, it would be for, previous expenses that I've put into individual, accounts, but I love the idea of being able to lump them together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You are able to do that. So there are a couple different ways of doing that, because I'm assuming those are made on your personal account for your business.
I'll say yes for the point, yeah.
So if that's the case, then you would do maybe a journal entry, or what you can do is you can create another account. It wouldn't be connected to your bank account, but you can create another bank account and say personal checking and record the transactions that way. We'll go through how to manually record those transactions in just a couple minutes. We're going to go through 4 or 5 transactions of adding it this way, and I'll show you how to manually add transactions.
Let me try to ask this question since I don't think I typed it very well. So say I had 4 different vendors 4 different places that I went and had something to eat, but they really belonged under the category just generally for restaurants. Is there a way to change those, bring all those accounts, those transactions?
Yes.
Under the category?
Yes. Yep. So that would be merging the vendor names. So if you had all those, you set it up and you set up each one of those restaurants as individual vendors, there is a way to merge those names to all be under restaurant to clean up your vendor list. I think
Fantastic.
Is that correct?
Yep. Perfect. Thank you very much. Perfect.
We'll get there in just a little bit. We'll go through a couple of these transactions, and we're going to talk about the vendors side, vendors and customer list in about an hour. We're going to talk the banking side first, go through these bank feeds, record them manually, and talk about reconciling. We're going to take a 15-minute break or a 10-minute break, depending on how much time we have. And then we'll talk about invoicing and payments of bills in the last 45 minutes or so of the workshop.
One quick more question, Christina. On the topic of merging item that has been categorized under a different name. Can you also go into the balance sheet, find that entry based on the month that you did it under, and go back and change it to what you want it to be?
Of course, yes. So
Okay.
anything you do in QuickBooks, that's a very, very good point. Anything that you do in QuickBooks, nothing is permanent, nothing. You can go back and modify any piece of information that you'd want. I would say not to change dates and dollar amounts or the source account. So if it came out of a checking account, I wouldn't tell you to change that. But if you need to update a vendor on a transaction, if you need to change an account, like let's say you accidentally posted this to uncategorized income and you actually want it to be under sales, we can go back and modify that. And I'll show you how to do that again, just in just a few minutes.
Great, thank you, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so here we're in Books by Bessie as our payee, and then we have to include our why. So this is a who did we receive money from, who did we pay? Then we have to put a category. Why did we receive this money? Why did we spend this money? So where it says uncategorized income, here we're also going to remove that. Where it says select category, we're going to create a new account just to show you how to do that. So I'm going to select retail sales is going to be my new category. Similar to when we created Books by Bessie, you have this little gray box that appears directly below. And we're just going to select the option to add retail sales to our QuickBooks file. This is our new account window. And there are two pieces of information that are really important or that are needed. One is deceptively not. So you have account type and you have the name. Those are the two pieces of information that are the most important here. This detail type, although it has a little red star indicating that it is required, does not affect any of your reporting. Your account type and the account name do. So your account type here is going to be, you're going to have listed here all of your balance sheet accounts. So all of your assets, your bank accounts, your fixed assets, then all of your liabilities and equity. Those are all in balance sheet. And then you have income down to other expenses. Here we're going to create an income account, but 99% of the time, when you create new accounts in QuickBooks, they're going to be new expense accounts. And the reason for that is most businesses have maybe one or two income streams, right? If you have retail versus wholesale, online sales versus I don't know, in person, what stuff like that. Those might be your income accounts. Whereas with expenses, you have a lot more variety. You might have advertising expense, office expenses, professional fees, consultants, subcontractors, materials, any of those things. The variety of our expenses is a lot more vast than the variety of our income coming in, for the most part. So 9 times out of 10, when you go create new accounts, you're going to create expense accounts. Here, we're creating an income account. Okay. So we have our income account, we have retail sales is the name. So the account type determines what report it appears on, and the name is how you're going to see it on that report. If you are not sure how to set it up or what group it belongs to, just set it up as an expense and give it a name. You can say retail sales, I wasn't sure. Like something like that. You want to make it, your chart of accounts or your listing of categories is somewhat unique to your business. You want to make it generic enough that anyone would understand your financials when looking at it. But you also want to make it specific to stuff that's important for you to track. Now, I have a client who works, he's actually in the home healthcare industry as well. And he has all of his accounts broken into subcategories. So he has, bank charges, and I'll have ACH fees, credit card charges, merchant fees, different things like that. And then under office expenses, cleaning, materials, supplies, things like that. He has everything broken down to very specific levels. And that's not necessary for everybody. Some people just want to see maybe one bucket of just office supplies. Now you can break down these accounts as much as you want, but I would just say stay somewhat reasonable. You wouldn't create an account called pens unless maybe you sold pens. So you would create something generic enough like office supplies. One example I'm going to give in just a little bit is training expense. So again, to the home health industry, you might want to track training because you have a lot of training for your employees in order to go out to people and to help them. That's one option. Training expense would be an important thing to track for your business. Whereas maybe you are a nutritionist and you go to training classes, you go to different programs and stuff, but training expense is it's not really a major part of your business. So you might just lump it under office expenses or something like that, or maybe continuing education, something along those lines. It might not be, you want to track something that is, that's important to you, something that's in a big enough of a bucket that's important for you to track, if that makes sense. How do you give income to come up as an account type? Not giving me that choice. Under account type, it doesn't give the choice to, that's odd. Under detail type, like, because account type shouldn't change. When you're in this new window, you should always be able to see this whole list. I'm not sure what's happening.
I guess I see current assets, bank, fixed assets, other assets, accounts payable, credit card, other current liabilities, long-term liabilities, and equity. Income didn't come up on that list, but I can just.
There's no way to scroll, or maybe refresh the screen.
Okay.
That's odd because it should appear there.
Okay. All right, I'll figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe the income type is under equity.
Yeah, it's directly below equity. So you see equity,
right,
and then you'll see income right below it.
Right.
Okay.
And then you have your detail type. Like I said, this doesn't affect reporting at all, but if you are an anal person like me, I'm an accountant, it's my nature. I'm gonna select detail type and just call it other primary income. But this does not affect any of your reporting. It kind of is there to help you make sure that you picked the right account type, because it gives you detail. Use other primary income to track income from normal business operations. So it's just as a confirmation that you selected the right account type. So that with that, I'm going to select account type income. The name is retail sales, and I'm going to select save and close.
What about the description? Is there something you necessarily need to go in description?
You do not have to put anything in this memo or description. You can if you'd like. It's not necessary. It is not a requirement.
Okay.
You also have a couple of little options down here. You have the ability to add an attachment. If you wanted to include a copy of a receipt, an invoice, an email, whatever, you can include that with this transaction. You are also able to create rules. So now we're going to see it when we create the ones for a rental down below. But a rule would be so QuickBooks creates rules on the backgrounds. Like I said before, it tries to remember what you've done in the past and apply those that same methodology in the future. For example, if your description downloads with something like Verizon, every month you're going to see a description of Verizon coming through the bank. QuickBooks is going to remember that you put Verizon in as your payee and you categorized it as telephone expense. So it's going to automatically do that for you. If you want to create a rule where that always happens, no matter what, every time it comes in, you want it to always do that, you can select the option, create a rule, and say, whenever the bank downloads with Books by Bessie, I want it to always be categorized as Bessie's Books, changed on me, Bessie's Books, and I always want it to be categorized as retail sales. So that's what creating a rule is. And then you have the option to exclude, and we do not want to press this button. So we want to live with these two here. Once this information is set, who we paid or who paid us and why they paid us, we can click add to the far right.
Question, Christina, is there a reason why in QuickBooks in the creating the rule process that it doesn't accept special characters in the naming convention? Like
No,
an asterisk, if you put an asterisk there or something or comma, it doesn't.
So I know with starting with a comma, That's
So
a
let me tell-
programming thing.
Right. Mhm.
Because I know if I put it into Excel, if it starts with a comma, it doesn't like it, or if it starts with a the single quote, it doesn't
Right.
like that. It has
Yes.
to be something related to programming. Other than that, I'm not 100% sure why.
Okay, because sometimes I have to go and change the rules because the name is different when it comes in a second time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure why it does that. It's just sensitive, and I think some characters are affect the back end programming of it differently than others.
Okay.
Okay, so now to continue on, we're going to look at these next 3 transactions, these 3 for a rental. We're going to skip the first one for a minute, and we're going to focus on the one that's October 15th, a rental, uncategorized expense for $1,200. Similarly to the Books by Bessie, we click anywhere along this line other than where it says add. So we click anywhere here, and here we have the same 2 fields, the who and the why, the customer or vendor, who paid us or who did we pay, why did they pay us. Now here you also have customer project. So you are able to do a bit of job costing in QuickBooks. So if you want to track how much a particular customer or a particular, I guess customer would be the right way to put it, has cost you to complete that sale or complete that job, you can tag the individual expense transactions to a specific customer. You can then run a report, your profit and loss, and say, filter it for that customer to say, how much money did they receive from that versus how much did I spend? And you can track your profitability by jobs. That is, again, that's a feature that's only available in the Plus version of QuickBooks, but that's the test drive file. You then have this box of billable. So if you, let's say, get reimbursed from your customers, maybe for travel expenses, this is a way to record them. Then when you go to create the invoice, you'll get a little pop-up saying, there's expenses outstanding. Do you want to bill your client now? So it's a good way for those travel expenses, those reimbursements to not get lost, because they're automatically going, well, not automatically, but they will be tagged and then automatically pop up when you go to create an invoice. Okay. So to continue here, just like we did for Bessie's books, here we don't have a name that pops up. We're going to create one. So where it says select payee, we're going to create a new one and we're going to call it A1 rental. Again, we see that little nice pop-up, handy pop-up appears. We click add A1 rental. And this time, again, QuickBooks tries to be smart. It says this is money going out of the bank, so this must be to a vendor. We select the option to save. I'm going to ask all of you to save, and then I'm going to select the option to add more details here. So I select add details. Now this is our vendor profile information. So similar to what our customer profile looked like with all their contact information up here at the top, emails, phone numbers, things like that. We also have the ability to enter their address here, include any notes, and then include any attachments. The nicest thing about the vendor profile is the ability to track payments for 1099s. So as a business owner, if you pay an individual or an LLC for services over $600 throughout the year, you have to issue what's called a 1099. That is the government's way of knowing what freelancers have brought in, what a confirmation of this exchange. So with a bunch of, in the world that we're in today, we have a lot of people in the market who are freelancers or people who are not receiving W-2s and things like that. There is no way for a government to know how much money they made throughout the year. The 1099 is that key for them. So you want to issue payments or issue 1099s to any individual that you paid over $600 for services throughout the year. Okay. And we are easily able to do that with this button, track payments for 1099s. Now, if at the beginning of the year, you do not know that you're going to be working with a person, or do not anticipate spending $600 on a project with somebody, then you might not put this information in. But if come December, you realize that you've paid them $800 throughout the year, you can actually come in here, click this box off to hit track payments for 1099s, and everything for the whole year will be tagged with this box. So you can, it's all retroactive. So all those transactions would all be grouped with that individual of the total to prepare that 1099. I also would suggest when you do start working with a new individual, a new subcontractor, consultant, anything like that, you're going to want to give them a form called a W-9, or ask them to fill out a form called a W-9. Best practice would be to attach that W-9 to their vendor profile in your QuickBooks file, just for easy reference. That W-9 would give you their address, their street address, their tax ID number, and you would obviously check this box for tracking payments for 1099s. Does anybody have any questions on that? Are 1099s required if a vendor is an LLC? Yes. 1099s are required for individuals and LLCs and partnerships, not corporations. Okay. I'm going to select save down here at the bottom. And now we're back here at our category screen, or transaction screen. So we have our vendor or customer that gets populated, and then we have to include a category. Why did we pay A1 rental? So I'm going to create an account, and I'm going to call it rental of equipment. Now, I've worked in this file many times, and I know that there's equipment rental, which is what I would typically call it. But I just want to get you guys in the habit of seeing, or I want to get you guys familiar with seeing the new account window. So we're going to create an account, call it rental of equipment, select the option to add. Here, again, we have account type is showing up as bank. That's the default. We're going to select the option to create an expense. And then using our detail type here, there is one for equipment rental, so I will select that. Does anybody have any questions on that so far? No? Okay, great. So I'm going to select save and close. Okay. Now, if you notice, there were 3 transactions for A1 rental when we started this process. It still are 3 transactions. You have A1 rental, rental of equipment for $1,200. If you look directly below this transaction on September 22nd, you have A rental. It automatically populated for me A1 rental based on my other transaction, as well as rental of equipment. So this is QuickBooks learning what you're doing and categorizing your transactions based on your previous history. Now here, I'm going to put in a customer here. I'm going to put in Amy's Bird Sanctuary because I know we're going to create an invoice for them later. You do not have to do this. I'm just going to do it to show you how it actually works. And I'm going to check the box for billable. But here we have the payee. Who did we pay? Why did we pay them? That is the most important part. Does anybody have any questions on that so far? Perfect. So I'm going to select the option to add here. I'm also going to add this second one. Now, if you notice, the first one didn't change. Well, sorry, before I get there. Once you add a transaction more than once, or another transaction type, I don't know what just happened to that pop-up. A pop-up's going to appear saying, do you want to create a rule for this transaction? You can select yes or no, and QuickBooks will make that either a hard rule that it's always going to follow, or it's going to be kind of like a soft rule where it says, it'll populate the information for you. You also have the ability on those creating of rules for it to automatically add to your QuickBooks file. I personally don't like that, but it's just, it is something to use for things like, Verizon, telephone expense, stuff like that.
I have a question.
Sure.
These filters are kind of like the filter feature in Gmail where we can send specific emails to spam or to certain folders. Am I understanding the function of this?
Yeah, like
Okay,
creating rules for that. Exactly. Like if
Okay.
you saw for I don't know why Best Buy was the first thing that came to my head, and you're like, I don't
Okay.
shop there. This is always going to be spam. It's the same exact thing.
Gotcha. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so before I saw that pop up, this is where I was going. So if you notice this top one for A rental, where this money is received for $200, that one didn't change. And the reason it didn't change is because QuickBooks recognizes A1 rental is a vendor. Based on terminology in QuickBooks, we pay our vendors. Customers pay us. We receive money from our customers. So QuickBooks says this is money that's being received. It doesn't like that it's coming from a vendor. We can add it to the vendor, but as far as the rule goes, as far as QuickBooks learning what you're doing, it's not going to pick that up. But we are going to put it to the same thing. We're going to select a payee and we're going to select A1 rental. And now the category. So when you return a product, when you remake a return or get a discount back or a refund back, something like that, you don't want to categorize that as income. That's not income. That's a reduction of the expense. So just to give an example, if I go to Staples and I spend $500 and I get $100, I go back and return $100. I didn't spend $500 on office supplies and receive $100 of income. I spent $400 on office supplies. So it's the same exact thing here. We're just going to select the account that this money should be offsetting. So we have A1 rental. It's a deposit refund. This is not income. It clearly says it in the bank detail. So I'm just going to put it to the same place I put the other two transactions of rental of equipment. And then select the option to add. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, that's exactly how I normally refund that comes back that pertains to a previous expense. I code it exactly the way the expense was coded.
That makes me so happy to hear.
So it goes to where it's not an income, it's just crediting, it's just reducing your expenditures, that's all.
Correct. And that is especially important. I believe it's, is it New York City? I'm not a tax accountant. I haven't done taxes in years, but I do understand that New York City taxes you based on your gross sales, not your net income. So you want to be sure to categorize. If you put all of the refunds into your gross sales amount, you're going to be taxed on that versus offsetting the actual expense accounts. I don't know if that's for every business type. That might just be for corporations, but it's just something to keep in mind and for me to scare you a little bit to tell you to do it the right way.
I think you're right. You're correct. I mean, the objective is to, tell the government that you don't make as much as you want them,
Correct. You want your
reduce your income as much as possible to reduce your tax.
Exactly.
Payout, basically.
That's always the goal, right?
Yes.
Okay, so does anybody have any other questions on bank transactions? You would go through these bank feeds. So we did 4 of the transactions. There's 21 more to go, and you would literally come in here and click into each one, record. Sorry, this one's categorized. Record who was paid and the category as to why. What you see here, where it says 2 records found, 1 record found, so on, that's what we're going to get into now. If we manually record the transactions in QuickBooks before they hit our bank account, so it's the same example of printing a check from QuickBooks before it hits the bank. QuickBooks is smart enough to know if, let's take a look at this one down here, this one on September 17th. Or no, that's not a good one. This one, still September 17th for Pies Cakes. Funny name. It's saying that there's $87.50 that hit your bank account on September 17th. There's a transaction recorded in QuickBooks on September 17th for the same dollar amount. Is this a match? So it tries to go through your list, and if it's not already matched to a bank transaction, if it didn't hit the bank when you manually recorded it, it just tries to help you match these transactions up. Okay, and we're going to get into that in just a couple minutes. Well, just now, actually. Does anybody have any questions before I jump into that?
Yes, I'm sorry. I have too many questions here, but
That's okay.
So as it relates to credit card payments through the bank account, I pay a credit card through the bank account. The feed comes in from the bank showing a transfer from my bank account to this credit card. That credit card is linked to QuickBooks also. I categorize all the entries from that credit card when the feed comes in. When the transfer is showing up through the bank account for paying that credit card, do I just need to indicate it as credit card transfer or credit card payment? I don't need to detail it out.
Yep. So what you would do, so let's pretend here. We're totally playing pretend in this transaction, just as an example. So we have checking here. Let's pretend this top transaction here, the $75 was to go against this MasterCard. I would put in here the payee, I paid MasterCard, and then the category here would be MasterCard. The exact same thing as what it is here. What's going to happen then is QuickBooks is going to know this transaction was recorded from the checking account. It's already posted to the QuickBooks file. Your MasterCard then would show a payment, and it would say that one transaction is found. Is this a match? So if you categorize this properly and in the category or match field, you put in the proper account name, it should automatically match when you go to the credit card side.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So now we're going to get into actually manually recording these transactions. And 99% of the time, if you are using just your bank feed and that's how all of your data gets into QuickBooks, you might not have to manually record transactions. It is good to know just in case, QuickBooks, there's something that happened, QuickBooks missed a transaction with the bank didn't push it in, whatever, it's technology, things happen. So this is just how you would do it manually to include that transaction on your books. So under the new button to the left of your screen, we select new, and we're actually going to create a new check because I want to show you in this process how to actually print a check from QuickBooks. Checks and expenses are very similar, these two options right here. There are, I believe, 3 differences. A check can be printed from QuickBooks and would be assigned a check number. What you actually, the check that actually went out to a vendor. An expense would be included as a reference number. It doesn't get printed out from QuickBooks. An expense can be written from a checking account, a savings account, a credit card account, anything like that. However, a check can only be written from bank accounts. So those are our main differences here. We're going to go with the check. The screens look identical other than those differences. So if I select check here, and we're going to wait for my screen to load for a second. Yeah. This is our new check window. In the upper left corner, we're going to record who we've paid. So I'm going to let's put in score here. So the payee is score. That's who I want to address my check to. And I'm going to select that option to add score. It's the same thing that we saw under our bank feeds. The name is going to be score, and this is recognizing, QuickBooks recognizes this is money going out. It is a check, so it's selecting vendor. I'm just going to select save here. Next is our bank account. Where did this money come out of? So we have our checking account here. We're writing this money out of our checking, and this is going to show you your book balance, not what's in the bank. Your books may know things that the bank does not. For example, outstanding checks. The bank doesn't know those checks exist until those checks are cashed. So this is your book balance of your checking account. You can include a mailing address here. If let's say you wanted to have it in one of those little mailing envelopes, this would actually print onto a check there. So I'm just going to use my office address here. We can include a payment date. I'll just leave it as today to keep it nice and easy. If you hand wrote a check, you can type in the check number here. But if we want to print it from QuickBooks, we're going to check this box here to print later. Then down below, we're going to put in the category, why did we pay score? So I'm going to create an account. Let's go to training expense, the same one that we were talking about earlier. So we have training expense here, similar to the bank feed. You get the little gray add button again. We're going to select it. We're going to select our account type. It's an expense. QuickBooks in the bank feed, it's not as smart. In the actual checking transaction or deposit, it does recognize the account type. It defaults to expenses rather to bank account. The detail type for this, we're just going to use the general option. We'll just call it other business expenses. And just to show you how this looks on your profit and loss, I'm going to make training expense under, let's see, is there continuing education? Let's just put it under office expenses. Okay. This sub-account feature is very nice, especially for, professional fees is good to break out the difference you pay to an accountant, a lawyer, a consultant, things like that. Payroll expenses, breaking it out, wages versus taxes, payroll fees, and things along those lines. So we have the account type is expenses, the name is training expense, detail type is other, and the sub-account, it is a sub-account of office expenses. Once all that's populated, we select save and close in the bottom right. Now we have a description. So since we're printing a check out of QuickBooks, this description is not going to print on a check. It's going to print on a check voucher, a payment voucher. The memo down here will actually print on a check. So I'm going to put the description here, QBO training 1015. And then in my memo, just to make them different, QBO training, and I'll exclude the date there. As our dollar amount, let's just put $100 in there. And that's the only information that's needed. We can ignore this billable tax and customer. This again would be if you want to track your expenses by customer or if you want to bill them back in expense. Okay. When we are creating a check, we populated it all, but there are 5 pieces of information that are needed. Okay. We see these, all of the transactions we've recorded have had these 5 pieces of information, but from the bank feed, 3 of them are recorded already. So just to go through what they are, we have the who we've paid, why did we pay them as our category, where did this money come from is our bank account, when did it happen, and for how much. So those who, what, when, why, and how, those are all included on your check here. Who did we pay? Why did we pay them? Where did it come from? When did it happen? How much was it? So those 5 pieces of information are included on every one of your transactions. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that before I hit the option to print? Okay. So here, when I'm in the check, I can print the check directly from here. I can select the option to print check along this black bar down here at the bottom. So I select print check. Now, something that's important to note, QuickBooks does not actually generate a check that can be cashed at a bank. QuickBooks only populates information onto a check that you've received from the bank or ordered from a third party or QuickBooks, prints that information onto a check. So here we would have to align our printer. We'd actually take that check that we received from our bank, put it into our printer, and the printer and the QuickBooks will fill in all that information for us. In order to have that work, we would just set up our alignment. You'd put a check in the printer and just make sure it prints out properly. I don't have a sample check, nor do I have a printer at home. So I'm gonna say, yes, I finished with my setup, but it's a pretty easy process. You just take the check, put it in your printer, and run a fake check through it, just to make sure all of the fields line up properly. So I say, yes, I'm finished.
Could you also just write a check if you?
Yeah, you can just handwrite the check too. You don't
Okay.
have to print it out.
Just double checking.
The benefit of printing it out is if you print a ton of checks, if you print multiple checks a month, when they come in through your bank feed, they're only going to say check 1001, 1002. It's not going to have all that detail. So you would have to go back to your checkbook and populate that all. If you print the checks for QuickBooks, you wouldn't have to do that. If you write 1 or 2 checks a month, handwrite the check. It makes it nice and easy. But if you're printing, 50 checks a month, I would suggest doing it from here.
Got it. Thanks for that.
No problem. So this is going to be our print check window after we align our printer and make sure that all of that's set up. In the upper left corner, we select the account that we're printing these checks from. These are all going to be coming out of our checking account. Again, you're going to see the book balance. This is not the bank balance. This is our book balance and the total of the checks that are selected in this list. We only have one here. The information we need to populate on our first check run and then ensure it's correct in the future is our starting check number. Because QuickBooks is printing on actual check stock, it's not generating check stock. You need to tell it the number of the check that you first put into that printer. So 1001 might be voided because you did the alignment. So we start 1002. That's going to be the first check that's in that printer that QuickBooks is going to pull and put this information on. QuickBooks is then going to assign the check that number. And then the next time you go to print, it's going to say starting check number 1003. It's going to keep a record of the last checks that it printed. You can always modify this in the future. If you hand wrote 1003 and then you started 1005, you would just modify it just to make sure that it is correct. But it will keep a running tally and keep that consecutive number going for you. So I select the option to preview and print. I'll print it so we can see it a little bit bigger. This is how it's actually going to print out. So if you notice, this is all the information that would be printed on a check. The date would be in the upper right, pay to the order of, the dollar amounts written out numerically and in words. The address that would appear in the envelope, the window envelope, and then the memo that we included. As we scroll down, this is, I'm sorry, I missed something when we were talking about the alignment. There are 2 different checks that are supported with QuickBooks. There are voucher style checks and there are standard style checks. I would always recommend with going the payment voucher. And the reason I say that is because 1 sheet of paper equals 1 check. The standard is 3 checks on 1 sheet. And the reason I suggest going with the one sheet per check is that printing is going to be significantly easier. Unless you print checks in multiples of 3s, you're going to always have to handwrite one of those checks that's on there because your printer's not going to grab it correctly if it's just 1 or 2 checks. So if you use the payment voucher style, you have the check at the top with 2 payment vouchers. Best practices here is to send 1 payment voucher to your vendor and keep 1 payment voucher for yourself as proof of the check or record of the check. Here you'll see the description that we included as well as a memo prints out on that payment voucher. Okay. My little Zoom thing is blocking, jumping back to my other tab. Okay. And I'm going to close here. Once those checks print, QuickBooks is going to ask you if they printed correctly, just ensuring that the alignment was correct, that it actually printed right, that it didn't grab multiple checks, things like that. So we're going to say everything's great, it printed correctly, and then select the option for done. Okay. Notice here your starting check number, it's automatically updated to 1003. Okay, now we're going to go move on to creating deposits, receiving this money, making a sale. So again, on the left side menu, we select the option to add new, and under the other column, select the option for bank deposit. Okay. Similar to our check, the first thing that we're going to put in is the account. Where is this money going to? So account, we have checking. Our balance is our book balance again. The date is defaulted to today. I'm going to ask you all to ignore this section here where it has Cool Cars and Freeman Sports. We're going to talk about that when we get to invoicing. Okay, we're just going to continue scrolling down, and where it says add funds to this deposit is where we're going to start entering data. So under the column received from, here we're going to enter our customer, and just we're going to create a generic customer. Let's create one called Square Customer. Again, we see that little pop-up appear. We're going to select it, and we're going to create a new name. Then we have our account. I'm going to just use the retail sales one, the same one we used for Books by Bessie earlier. We can then include a description if we'd like, a payment method and a reference number. Those are all fields that you can use. They are not required. The dollar amount, though, that is one of those things that we would need. So let's bring our bank account positive. I know that it's negative 644, so let's go $1,000 is our deposit. It's the same similar thing. The same 5 questions or points of data are entered here as well. Where did this money come from, or where's this money going to? When did this money get deposited? Who did we receive it from? Why did we receive it from them? And how much did we receive? With all of that, you can select Save and New at the bottom. However, I will say, anybody who uses a third-party processor, such as Square, knows that a $1,000 deposit or $1,000 worth of sales, you don't actually receive $1,000 from Square on that deposit. You're going to be paying a credit card fee. What you can do, and it's totally acceptable, you can either net your credit card fees in your deposit. So if, let's say, this $1,000, it actually hit the bank at $970, I can just put that as my sales, net it against my credit card fees. However, if I wanted to track my credit card fees, I want to say I received $1,000 in sales, and then I paid a bank fee. So here, Square Customer is who this is related to. I'm going to select bank charges. And then in that second line, under the $1,000, I'm going to put minus 30. And the reason I do that is because a bank deposit from a credit card processor is typically 2 transactions in one. It's the sales you received and the bank charges you paid. So these 2 lines represent each of those 2 things happening. Money you received, I received $1,000 from a customer, but I had to pay Square in order to receive that money. So my deposit hitting the bank is $970, and that's totally okay, again, to record $970 as your net retail sales. However, if you want to include your credit card charges, if you want to track what you've paid, you can include bank charges as a second line and minus the credit card amount, the credit card fee amount. That makes sense to everybody? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. I take silence as a yes. That's okay. So we have 970. It'll show us at the top what our total deposit is. It'll also show multiple other fields here. Total deposit. Okay. So if we're good on this, I'm going to select the option to save and close down here at the bottom. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about reconciling. So when you have all these transactions coming in through your bank feed, the process of reconciling should be very easy because QuickBooks already knows what came in through your bank account. What you're doing here on the bank feeds section is categorizing what came in through the bank. It makes the recording easier, the bookkeeping aspect of this easier. What we're doing under accounting and reconcile is ensuring that all of the transactions that happened in the bank are actually recorded in my QuickBooks file. It ensures that the bank feeds are working correctly. It ensures that all of my data is in my file. So I would recommend, at a minimum, you should be in your QuickBooks file once a month. You receive a bank statement once a month, a credit card statement once a month. You should update your books once a month. It makes it significantly easier if there are any discrepancies, if there's any issues with your account. It's a lot easier to clean up in 1 month versus 6 months down the line versus 12 months down the line, stuff like that. So we go to accounting along the left side menu, and we're going to select the option to reconcile. It just kind of gives a little detail of what reconciling is, match the books to the bank records. And we're just going to hit the option to get started. I'll say, let's do it. You'll see a lot of pop-ups in the reconciliation screen. You'll just get used to hitting the little X's and get rid of them. So when we reconcile an account, we're going to select the account that we want to reconcile. We've been working with our checking account, so that's the one that we're going to select. I would recommend reconciling any third-party financial institution statement that you receive, checking accounts, savings accounts, credit cards, loans, anything like that. You always just want to make sure that any of these entities that are holding and managing your money, money that you owe, anything like that, your books match their books. So we're actually going to take, so you have the beginning balance and ending balance. This information is going to come directly from your bank statement. Now, again, I don't have a fake statement to show you, so we're going to play pretend again for a minute, but this information would come from your bank statement. So once you receive that Chase statements at the end of September, you're going to take the ending balance of that particular statement. Here, I'm going to put the balance of 326 and the ending date, just, I know it's in the future, but again, we're playing pretend. So we have ending balance, we have 326, your ending date, just put November 30th.
So Christina, question, what if you don't have a beginning balance when you go to reconcile?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
No, when you go to reconcile, I don't see a beginning balance. Like for the credit card that I try to reconcile, when I go to do that, there's not a beginning balance, but it asks me for an ending balance though.
Interesting. Okay, so there's a couple of reasons why that could happen. So you're beginning, if you've never reconciled an account before, you never reconciled an account in QuickBooks, your beginning balance, I was going to say will start off with 0, but that's not 100% true. The reason it's not 100% true is because if you've never reconciled an account before, but you have it connected to a bank feed, QuickBooks says, let's say I connected my bank account today, October 15th, but I've been in business since October 2019. When I connect my books to my bank account, and let's say I only want 2020 transactions in there, QuickBooks is going to download back to January 1st, 2020. My bank account has a balance as of that day. So QuickBooks pulls that balance, let's say it's $5,000, pulls that $5,000, that's my beginning balance, and automatically marks it as reconciled. Sometimes it works in your favor for reconciliations, other times it does not. It's just kind of the nature of the technology of it. But that would be your beginning balance as of this year.
Okay.
Now, if you have an account that you have connected to your file, maybe it's been connected for years, because that's a relatively new thing that it does that. It's been connected for a few years and you've never reconciled to the account before, your beginning balance may start off as 0. I would recommend putting in a journal entry or one transaction that says, this is my beginning balance. Let's say it is January 1st, put that in. And then when you go to reconcile, just check it off and mark all the transactions from there on out. You'll see what the reconciliation process looks like in just a second.
Okay.
Okay. So I have ending balance 326, my ending date is November 30th, and then I select the option to start reconciling. Okay. Now at the top of our screen, we're going to see the statement ending balance, what I typed in, versus my cleared balance. So this is what's in QuickBooks. What's in QuickBooks balance is made up of my beginning balance, so the $5,000, minus any payments I have checked off in this list, plus any deposits I have checked off in the list. This difference here is the difference between my cleared balance and my statement ending balance. So the old process for reconciling, or the real process for reconciling, is taking our bank statement and saying, okay, on June 17th, did I have a payment of $300 that hit the bank? It's on the bank statement, it's in QuickBooks, I check it off. Do I also have a deposit of $175? It's on the bank statement, it's in QuickBooks, I check it off. $250 on July 9th, bank statement, QuickBooks, check it off. And you keep going down the list, that same process. Literally looking at your bank statement, seeing what actually cleared versus what's in your QuickBooks file, and just checking off the transactions as you go. Now, when we came in here, there were transactions that were already marked off. What QuickBooks does, and this is one of the best features of QuickBooks to me, is QuickBooks says, you see these transactions here? They should be familiar to you, because these are the transactions we entered from our bank feed. These little green squares here represent a bank feed transaction. So this has been added from the bank feed. What QuickBooks does is it says, hey, I pulled this information from your bank statement. This should have cleared your bank account. So it automatically marks it as cleared when you go into your reconciliation. So we have the $800 to A rental, the $200 refund, the $1,200, and then the $55 from Books by Bessie. So if your transactions are literally only coming in from your bank feed, that's the only source of transactions, how they get into QuickBooks, your reconciliation process should be super easy. There are other reasons why they might be off, but just your bank feeds are the only way data gets into QuickBooks. Your reconciliation should be a breeze. There are instances where it might not be. One of those reasons may be you didn't clear all of your transaction from your bank feed. Maybe you went to Reconcile and there was still a transaction from September in your bank feed list that you overlooked. So you want to go back there, make sure everything is cleared from that bank feed, those 25 transactions we first saw, make sure it's down to 0, and then come back into your bank, reconciliation screen. If that's not the reason and that's not the case, you would go through the manual process of taking all of your transactions, looking at the bank statement, looking at what's in QuickBooks, and going through individually. 3840, hit the bank, hit QuickBooks, check it off. 8909, hit the bank, hit QuickBooks, check it off. And so far down the list to find where there's any discrepancy. Can you get this bank data from Excel without the statement or connecting it to the bank? Yes. So you can get the bank data from Excel. I mean, you can get the bank data from the bank without connecting it to QuickBooks, and you can import it to QuickBooks if you wanted to do that. I will say QuickBooks, that connection between QuickBooks and your bank is encrypted, and it doesn't move any money around. So that's an important note. If that's one of the fears of connecting the bank account, it's literally just pulling transaction data. So it's not actually moving cash. But if, let's say, you don't know your bank log, or that's not a good example, you should know your bank login as a business owner. If the connection does not exist between your account and QuickBooks, you 99.9% of the time can export your bank detail into an Excel or CSV file and upload that into QuickBooks. The only times that doesn't work is if the bank doesn't allow it. And I can't think of one off the top of my head that doesn't allow that.
So question, Christina, can you definitively say that every transaction that gets uploaded from your bank into QuickBooks has cleared your bank account?
That's what this process does. So going through the bank feed, it's a help. It's a huge help going through the bank feed and ensuring that everything's there, everything's categorized. This reconciliation process just confirms that everything that happened in the bank statement is recorded in your QuickBooks file.
Okay,
So it's just the double check.
got you.
Okay. When you are done with this, I'm going to check off all of the transactions. So I'm just going to select all by hitting this little bubble at the top. When you are done checking off all of your transactions and your statement ending balance and your cleared balance have a $0 difference, you can click Finish Now. If for any reason you have a difference here, again, let's maybe say I accidentally unchecked 54.55. I have the difference here. You do not want to force a reconciliation by selecting Finish Now. You always want to go back and make sure that each of those transactions are recorded. The reason I say that is because if you select Finish Now here and it's not actually finished, these don't actually match, QuickBooks posts a transaction to force it to match. So it'll create an account called Reconciliation Discrepancies, and it's going to push all of that data, any difference, whatever that difference is, into that account, just so that for next month you'll be all set. So it might be tempting if you're getting frustrated doing your reconciliation, but you just don't want to do that, because that reconciliation discrepancy, even if let's say it's $100, it might not be one $100 transaction. That could be, you know, $1,000 of income and $900 of expenses, you know, something like that. So I'm going to select the option to Finish Now here. I see a question about cash payments. I'm going to get to that in just 1 second. Once you reconcile this account and everything is okay, we're going to say we are good to go here. You can select the View Reconciliation Report, and you'll actually get a detailed report of what you just did in the file. So here you'll see this should look like the front page of your bank statement, the beginning balance, any money, the checks that went out or payments that went out, payments that came in, and the ending balance. If you scroll through this down into this report, you'll see all of the transactions that have been cleared. So there's 35 checks and payments that cleared the bank account for this period. Keep going down, then you'll see all of your deposits.
So basically, you cannot edit the beginning balance. If QuickBooks doesn't have a beginning balance, you cannot go back and edit that, correct?
Not without doing a reconciliation.
Gotcha.
So if let's say QuickBooks doesn't have a beginning balance. So let's say, let's go back to Reconcile here. Let's say 326 was the wrong beginning balance. Let's pretend that that's zero, okay? If it is supposed to be, let's say this is supposed to be $400, not 326. What I could do is just create a deposit or a journal entry, either way. We'll say checking, we'll date it 01/01/2020, because that's what it started with. I would put an account, call it opening balance equity. It's an account that QuickBooks gives you automatically. And then let's say 400 minus 326, $74 is going to make me whole. I would put in my description to correct beginning balance or reconciliation, and then hit save and close. If that transaction is recorded, I'll put in my ending balance what my beginning balance should be, $400. And just because I did the last one through November 30th, I'm going to select the same date. But you would do this to set the beginning balance. You would do it, let's say January 1st of the year, because that's the date that we'd start from. Ending balance, the ending date, start reconciling, and then just check off that new transaction that you created. And then that'll give you your new beginning balance. If I check it off and hit finish now, when I go back to my Reconcile screen, you'll see here my beginning balance is now $400. It's a little bit convoluted to get there, but that's just one way to get it all started.
Trips up the trade, I guess.
Okay, so one more thing I want to talk about quickly, just 2 minutes, and then we're going to take a little break, is reports. So as I mentioned when we first started, every transaction that we record actually gets updated onto a report. Oh, I'm sorry. There's two questions here. How about cash payments? So for cash payments, do you mean money going out, like you're paying things in cash, or money that's coming in? So I'll answer for both. What'd you say? Okay. So if it's cash payments, there's 2 ways of recording it. So number 1 is if you are actually making ATM withdrawals out of your bank account, you're going to see something come up that says ATM. You're going to see a transaction that says ATM withdrawal. Within that transaction, you can put the payee, why you took out that money, and the category, who you paid that money with, and the category that it belongs to. So you took out $200 to pay, I don't know, a subcontractor, an intern, something like that. You could put their name there and then categorize it properly if you are going to the ATM and pulling it out. Otherwise, if somebody is paying you in cash and then you're going to make payments with that cash to somebody else without ever hitting your checking account, what you'd want to do is create a bank account in QuickBooks and call it petty cash. That way, when you receive money in, your deposit is going to go into petty cash and your expenses can come out of petty cash. Now, obviously, that's not going to have a bank feed. It's not going to have a connection, but any of those cash transactions that are there would all be maintained from that petty cash account.
You track it under petty cash?
Yeah, you can track it under petty cash.
Okay, so it'll be expense and then petty cash and then the description.
Correct. So your account here, so new and then expense. This payment account would be petty cash.
Okay. Oh, so instead of a bank, it would be petty cash.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. So I asked if you could help us by giving us a standard chart of accounts, because I know you were very good with it. In the beginning, you said training under office expenses. So I like the way you classified that.
So what QuickBooks, yeah. So when you set up your QuickBooks file, it's going to give you a standard chart of accounts. It's going to give you a generic one that's used for most businesses. When you select the industry that your business is in, it's going to give you a chart of accounts that's tailored for that industry. You can add to that as much as you want, or not use it. You can modify it however you would like. But QuickBooks does try to help by giving you a standard list, and then you can always add to it or take away as much as you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So just to touch on reports for just a minute, we're going to select the left side menu, and you guys can just follow along on my screen. If you're following along in your own file, it's probably just easier just to look up at what I'm doing right now. So along the left side menu, you have the option for reports. As I mentioned, QuickBooks has 120 stock reports. What QuickBooks Online has done, it's broken it out into different groups, and your favorite reports are automatically these 3: your accounts receivable aging, your balance sheet, and your profit and loss. Your receivable aging we'll talk about in about a half hour or so. We're going to focus mainly on the balance sheet and profit and loss here. Majority of the other reports can be generated just from these 2. So the way that I like to describe this is your balance sheet is your accountant's favorite report. Your profit and loss is yours. And the reason for that, so let's open up a balance sheet. A balance sheet is a report that's dated as of a specific date and time that gives you the value of your business, your assets versus your liabilities versus your equity. So if we look at our balance sheet here, as of October 15th, You're going to have your assets. So your bank account, how much you have in either your checking or your savings account. Your receivables, how much any of your customers owe you. Your inventory, undeposited funds, we'll talk about again in just a little bit. And your fixed assets. So as of any specific date, specifically here, October 15th, our total assets total 22,580. These are cumulative, they're running balances. That's why they are on the balance sheet and dated as of a specific day. Same thing with your liabilities and equity. As of October 15th, I owe my vendors $1,600. I have $157 on my credit card, your sales tax liabilities, notes, and then your equity, what you've put into the business. So this is typically your accountant's favorite report. Your favorite report is going to be the profit and loss. So your profit and loss is a report that shows all of your income and all of your expenses over a given period of time. So here, let me scroll up just a little bit. In the upper right corner or upper left corner, sorry, you'll see the report period. This defaults to this year to date, but you can change this to any period you would like. You can go for all dates that your company's been in business down to the lowest increment of 1 day. So any period of time you can use here. You can change your columns. You can see if you wanted to see it by month, by quarter, and so on. You can do comparative reporting if you want to see, percentage from this year, percentage of income, stuff like that. But if we just scroll down just a little bit in our profit and loss, we're going to look for that retail sales account. So scroll down, this one here, retail sales, and you have $1,000. If I click on this line, on the amount, you're going to see the transaction detail, what makes up that $1,000 that I'm seeing on my report. The transaction for Books by Bessie was dated in November, which is why I did my reconciliation through November. So if I extend the period of this report to include November transactions, you'll also see Books by Bessie is listed here as well. Now, every report in QuickBooks has this drill down functionality. If I go down just a little bit further, I want to find my rental of equipment account. So here you have office expenses and you have training expense. You can, if you don't want your accountant or a bank or whoever's looking at your financials to see what your sub accounts are, and you just want them to see just the main parent account, you can click on these little arrows next to it and hide the subs. So if, let's say, for meals and entertainment, you wanted to create an account called coffee, you can have meals and entertainment and then coffee to track how many times you went to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or the local coffee shop. And you don't have to have your accountant, your bank, or anything else actually see what makes up that total. You would just see the total meals and entertainment. If I look down here at rental of equipment, this is what we did all of our A1 rental stuff to. I click on this $1,800 and I'll see the 3 transactions that hit my bank account. So with the reports, everything gets updated as you enter transactions. You cannot break QuickBooks if you wanted to, especially with playing with reports. So I encourage you to play around with reports, click around, customize as much as you want, because you can't break it. I promise. I've seen lots of people try. Does anybody have any questions on that? I know we touched on the reports briefly, but we'll talk about them again in a minute.
Hi, Christine. I have a quick question here. So I know we're discussing another transaction, but here on this one, it says A1 rental deposits and rental. So you recommend that, even when we do so let's say the industry wasn't landscaping and it was real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Would it still be like this?
Yeah, it would be the same thing. So you might not have rental of equipment. If you're in real estate, you probably don't rent much equipment. But it would be the same kind of idea. These descriptions here, these memos descriptions, this just comes from your bank detail. So you can always modify the memo. So if I click on to this one, the deposit refund, I can change this description if I want to. I can change it even when I enter the transaction from the bank feed. So if I wanted to change this and say A1 rental, return of equipment, I can change that description however I would like. What's the most important part here is just not changing the amount, the account that it came from, or the dollar amount of the transaction. These accounts here that they're posted to, you can modify this to what makes sense for your business.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I know you haven't touched on invoices.
Yeah, that's the next thing
but-
we're going to.
Okay. Receiving payments, is that similar to the deposit process?
Yes, yep. So let's do this because that's bringing us right to the next section. Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 3:15 and then we'll talk about bills and invoices. Okay?
Okay.
Sound good to everybody? So again, I'm just going to remind everybody because I think a couple people joined a little late. If you are interested in a discount on the QuickBooks Online software, please feel free to include your name in the chat, your name and your email address in the chat, and I'm going to send out a link to everybody. Yeah, and then we'll all go from there. So let's take 5 minutes, and then we'll all come back and keep going.
Thank
I will
you.
be right back. No problem. So I don't know if anybody's still here with me, but I just went to use the bathroom in my apartment and there is a giant cricket in there. And those things scare the hell out of me.
So I found a baby cricket in my bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine this season we have in New York, we have crickets? It's crazy.
Yeah, those things, they scare me. So I've lived in this apartment for 3 years. I think I've maybe have seen one. And today,
Yeah, but
it
they
looks
won't
like,
hurt you. I don't think they hurt
oh no,
you.
they don't hurt at all. They're ugly and scary. And this one looked like it ate all the other crickets.
How
Oh
do
my
crickets
goodness.
even get into a New York apartment? Where do they come from that they would get into an apartment? That's just so weird.
I don't know. I mean, there's a basement right under me. I'm on the first floor and I live in Westchester, so I don't live in
Okay.
Manhattan.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's where he came from. But yeah. All right.
Changing the subject for a second. What's the next 45 minutes about? I just need to know because I'm trying to plan my schedule and see whether
absolutely.
the part's relevant to me.
Yeah. So the first thing we're going to talk about is bills. That usually takes about 10 minutes. It's a very quick process, entering bills and the payments and reporting surrounding that. And then after that, we're going to talk about creating invoices and sending those to customers, as well as receiving payments.
Okay.
Christine, do you consult also? Is it possible for us to work with you? I have some trouble I'm actually trained as a CPA, but I don't practice I don't practice accounting anymore. I think it's been 15 years.
And also, this isn't built for CPAs. It's built for, the business owner or a bookkeeper. So
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
So
We
I
actually,
consult with some people and I think my clients might need your help. So,
Mhm.
how can we work together?
Yeah, absolutely. So because this is a very entry level workshop, and we are using a sample file, Preston and Nagley, we do offer discounted rates on consulting services. So for the first 5 hours of consulting. So that rate is $100 per hour for the first 5 hours, and then it goes to my standard rate of $225 an hour after that. So
Okay.
if you would like that, more information on that, more information about the company, anything, again, if you put your name in the email, I'll include all of that information.
Okay, I put my name and information in the email. I would really like to work with you.
Of course.
Also, you would be able to teach me how to import it into Excel, correct?
Oh, of course. Yeah,
From Excel.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Also, I am going to, we have one more minute, but I am going to ask all of you at the end of this session. I know that SCORE sends around evaluation forms, but if you did include your email in the chat, I'm also going to include a link to my Pro Advisor profile. And if you enjoyed the workshop, if you learned something, anything, want to say something positive, please feel free to write a review on my Pro Advisor profile. We do offer a $10 Starbucks gift card if you do write a review. So if you write it, just let me know, and I'll send you the Starbucks gift card. And I also will say, please write a review if you enjoyed the workshop. If you did not, please contact me and let's try to rectify that before you let the whole world know.
Okay. Will do. What do I need to put in the chat to get the?
Just your email address would be perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Christine.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
No problem. Okay, so it is 3:15. So let's get started again. And we'll talk about bills and we'll talk about invoicing. So the first, I guess more than half of this, the first 2/3 of this workshop, really focused on bank transactions and cash basis accounting. So cash that actually came into the bank and cash that actually went out. What we're going to talk about for the last 45 minutes is accrual basis accounting. So we've received a bill, we haven't paid that bill yet. We sent an invoice to our customer and they haven't paid us for that yet. So that's going to be the last 45 minutes of this. So first we're going to talk about vendors and talk about bills. It's a little bit easier than invoices. So in order to get started, let's talk about our vendors and our vendor list. As I mentioned before, when we were creating our names from our bank feed, that we can go back and modify any of those names at any given time. So along the left side menu, again, you could follow along just with me just on screen or on your own in your sample file. We go to expenses and then click the tab. Well, I guess we could just click expenses as a whole. You have 2 tabs here. You have expenses and then you have vendors. So that first tab is going to show all of the expenses that we've recorded in the file. Some of these should look familiar. These top 2 should. And then we also have the tab for vendors. This colorful little bar on the top is related to your payables if you use purchase orders and if you send bills to your vendors. Or I'm sorry, that's not the right phrasing for that at all. If you record bills from your vendors, that detail would be included up here at the top. If you scroll down just a little bit, here you will see your whole vendor list. Gives your the phone information, the email, and if they have an open bill, that will be listed here. If I select A1 Rental, that was a vendor we created. So if I select A1 Rental, that top one, I click into that name, the expense transactions will be listed here. When you're looking at the vendor center or the customer center, the only transactions that will appear under a customer or vendor's name in their profile would be anything that's under the column that relates to that name, that type. So we had a deposit from A1 Rental, but that's not included in my vendor transaction list. Only these transactions are going to appear in this section. There are other ways to see it. There's reporting you can see it on, but just when you're looking at the vendor detail, that's why you do not see that $200 deposit. So while I'm in here, I can modify this vendor's information. If I click edit in the upper right, you'll see that same screen that we saw before, the new vendor profile, and I can go in and modify this however I would like. I can also easily change the categories of my transactions here. So if, let's say, this one didn't belong to rental of equipment and actually was, the first one that I saw was taxes and licenses, I can easily change it just by using the drop down and selecting it. I'm going to change it back just to keep my P&L the same. I'm going to leave it rental of equipment, but that's an easy way to go in and modify transactions for particular vendors. So here we have our transaction list, and then we also have our vendor details is our other tab, and this would actually give you all of the details that you had included in their vendor profile. You would just click edit to this side here and bring you to the same screen. Okay, now we want to record a bill. So if I record a bill, I select new in the upper left corner. Messing up my left and rights now. And under the vendor column, we're going to go down to the third option where it says bill. Now here, this looks very similar to our check transaction and our expense transaction. There's two things that are different though. Well, three. The first thing that you should notice here is under when we're creating a bill, when you have to enter a vendor. When we wrote checks, it said payee, choose a payee. You can write a check to a customer or a vendor, no problem. If we are recording bills, we receive bills from vendors. So anytime we create a new bill on QuickBooks, we have to use a vendor name. Now, if you do business with a customer that's also a vendor or vice versa, they can be set up on both lists. You just have to put some kind of differentiating character. So maybe like a -V for the vendor side or a -C for the customer side. Either way, they have to, it has to exist on both. You can't use a customer name on a vendor bill. Okay. So here, let's use a vendor. Let's use A1 Rental. Let's just be consistent here. Use vendor A1 Rental. We're then going to put in the terms that the vendor has given me. Let's say they give us net 30. QuickBooks by default gives you these set terms. This is going to be on your customer side and your vendor side. You can add new terms if you would like. If you give like a discount, if they pay in 10 days or whatever, you can get fancy with your terms. But these are just the generic ones that QuickBooks gives us. So we're going to stick with that because they're the most popular. So we say net 30 here. Our bill date would be January 1st, 2020. All right, let's make it today. You know what? Let's make it September. And then we have it due as of today. We would then put the bill number, so the invoice number that our customer has, or that our vendor has given us. And then the category. So we'll be consistent with what we've done before. And we'll say rental of equipment. And let's say this one's going to be for $1,500. That is the only information I need to include on this vendor bill. Does anybody have any questions on that? That's pretty similar to the checks and everything that we were writing before. You'll also notice that QuickBooks does give you a handful of pop-ups. They do try to sell you different services. New in QuickBooks Online is the ability to actually pay your bills directly from QuickBooks. And you would be charged a fee. There is a merchant processor fee associated with it, but it is a very convenient process. If you are interested, you just click on this little link. Or as I mentioned before, we are Intuit resellers. And if you want pricing or help or anything with that, please feel free to reach out. Okay. So we have the $1,500 bill here. I don't need to include anything else at all. I might want to include an attachment, a copy of the bill just for easy reference. You can do that.
Christina, and I don't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
So let me just wrap my head around this process. I get a bill from all my vendors, everyone that I pay money out to. Whenever I receive that bill, this is what I need to come and do in QuickBooks?
So not necessarily. So I would say if you have vendors that you're holding payment, or vendors that have terms, 30, 60, 90 days, stuff like that, I would put the bills in for those vendor bills. For bills like Verizon or maybe Optimum, something that has a recurring automatic payment, you can
Con Edison,
include the bills for those.
Central Hudson, Optimum, cable bills,
Even like Con Ed, stuff that's like a monthly, something that's coming out of your checking account automatically. I would not record bills for that, because then you have multiple steps.
I understand.
If you have like a bill that you're kind of holding on to paying, it's kind of entering bills in QuickBooks is kind of a funny thing, because not everybody does enter the bills. That's what the Simple Start package is for. But if you're holding them, or for like cash flow purposes, to know what you have upcoming, is a really good practice for why you would be recording bills.
How does it play into the reconciliation process?
It does not affect your reconciliation process until those payments are actually made on the bill.
Okay.
Okay. So we have this $1,500 here, and then we can select save down here at the bottom. And let me just close that out. Now, because I didn't leave my A1 rental screen, my vendor screen, it appears here still. And now you notice in the upper right corner, you have a $1,500 open balance. If I wanted to look at all of my vendor bills at one time and make a determination of who I'm paying, when I'm paying them, all of that, I would select my reports here along the right side, on the left side menu. I can scroll down through this list: who owes you, sales and customers, what you owe. I like the aging summaries the best. Some people prefer unpaid bills, but I'm going to show you AP aging just as a term of preference. It gives you the same detail. This just gives you a kind of a summary of what's due. So your AP aging report is going to be dated as of today. It always defaults to today's date. And then it breaks down the balances into 30, 60, 90-day increments. If you have things that are 90, 60, and 90 days old, I'm sure that vendors are calling you and you know that those are outstanding. But for current 1 to 30, 30 to 60, you can make a determination of, who you'd be paying first from this screen. So similar to when we looked at our profit and loss, you are able to click into any of these transactions and get, or any of these totals, and get a transaction detail report. So because we just created the $1,500 A1 rental bill, I'm going to click on that one first. Here, it's going to give me the detail of what I just created. September 15th was the date of the bill, the number, when it's due, and the amount that's due, and the total amount of the bill, and the amount that's open and still due. Okay. When I go to pay this bill, I would pay it by I can either click into the transaction and select the option to pay bill, or you can select new again in the upper left corner. Under vendors, select the option to pay bills. Here, it's going to list out all of the bills that you have outstanding. So these are all of our other vendors that are waiting to be paid. We select our payment date. We'll leave it for today's date. And then we select the vendors we want to pay. So I'm just going to pay A1 rental. When I check this box off, the payment amount is automatically going to populate to the open balance that's due. However, I can modify this. Let's say I didn't want to pay the full $1,500. I'm just going to put down a deposit of $750. I pay half of it. I am able to modify that here. And then that'll be the total amount that I'm paying. Also important to note, in the upper left corner, you have to select the payment account. Where are we making this payment from? We haven't used our credit card at all today, so let's use our credit card. The balance on our card is our book balance. We're going to select the date. That's, again, it defaults to today, 750. Then our current account balance is 157.72. What's coming out of my account, or what I'm now paying, is my total payment amount, giving us our new account balance of 907.72. And then, like I said, QuickBooks is really trying to sell this payments thing now. So it defaults to schedule payments online, but we're not going to fall for that. And we're going to select save and close. Now, because I also did not leave this screen, I left my AP aging report open. You see the amount of the bill is now $1,500. It's still $1,500, and my open balance has dropped to $750. If I click into this bill, you also see that in the corner. You have $750 that's due, one payment made of $750. I can click into this payment, and it links me to the transaction, to that payment transaction. Now, this would reconcile in your bank or credit card statement. In this instance, it would be a credit card statement. Does anybody have any questions on the bills or bill payments? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump into invoices then. So along
Sorry, Christine, I have a question.
Sure.
So what if like the client gives us a post-dated check?
A post-dated check, so that would be on the received payment side, correct?
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to get there in just a couple minutes. So we'll create the invoices, and then we'll go into the receiving payments from our customers. Okay. So left side menu, I'm going to go to sales first, similarly to what I did with the expenses. I select sales, and then you'll have all of your little tabs along the top, the 5 tabs. It gives you a little bit of an overview with a graph of your income over time. You are able, Intuit does have Intuit payments where it actually processes credit card payments. You are able to use that or set that up. Again, that's an additional fee. Whenever QuickBooks is moving money, there's always there's an additional service with that. That's just what this overview gives you. You have the shortcuts to create new transactions from here. We're not going to use that yet. Okay. Then you have all sales. These are going to be all of your sales transactions, all of your received payments, all of your invoices, all, sales receipts, all of that. Anything that's related to your customers will appear here. Similar little colorful bar as what you saw on the vendor side. You then also have your invoices tab, which is only going to show your invoices, not all of the other transactions that relate to customers. This is just invoices, just what's outstanding and what's been paid. So it defaults to the last 30 days here, but you can change your date range to whatever you would like to see. If we scroll down here, you'll see all of our invoice numbers, the dates those invoices were created, the customers, and what their status is. It even gives you the status of partially paid, when it's upcoming due, and then if we keep scrolling down, we should see all of the payments, when it's been deposited, and things like that.
So now I have a question. Sure. What happens when one of the companies who contracts us has their own invoice, which is an Excel spreadsheet? Like they use their own invoice. How could that be integrated into one of the basic Excel programs?
So they have their own invoice. Is that, and it's an invoice for your company that you're sending out, or it's an invoice that they're kind of, can you just explain it? Just
Sure. So the invoice is an Excel spreadsheet that tracks the student and the amount, the rate they pay me, and the amount of sessions I conduct on a monthly basis. And then the total is computed, and then I mail that to them on a monthly basis.
Okay, so that'll be in the actual like creation of the invoice. So I'm going to
Yeah.
show you the customers and then we're going to go into actually creating an invoice because I think you'll see exactly where that information is going to go.
Okay.
Okay, so then we go to customers and then this is going to be our customer list. Again, same little colorful bar at the top. If I select Bessie's books here, this is the one customer we created earlier. Looks very similar to our vendor screen with a transaction list. If you're using projects in the plus version, you'll have a link to that there. Then the customer details. You can edit the customer details by selecting edit from here or up in this upper right corner, edit and modify their customer profile. Okay. We're going to jump into products and services as we're creating an invoice. So I'm just going to leave that tab for right now. When we're in here, we have 2 ways. Well, there's 3 ways just from the customer center to create a new transaction. You can create a new transaction by in actually the customer's profile, new transaction, create invoice. We can go to overview and use the shortcut to create invoice. Or my go-to is always to the right, to the left and under new, the option for customers and record an invoice. So quickly, I'm just going to show you how to customize it first, and then we're going to go and talk about the detail that's in here. So if we want to customize our invoice and make it unique to our business before we send it out to our customers, we select along this black bar at the bottom, customize and edit current. Here, you have a PDF preview of what the invoice is going to look like. There's 3 different sections up here of what you're going to be modifying. You have different options of changing your template. I'll make it friendly. You can add your logo if you would like. You can change the colors. Let's make it red. There's like 4 different font styles you can use. And you can modify the margins and things.
Oh my God, this is so cute. I'm so sorry. I can't wait. I can't wait.
That makes me very happy.
It looks exactly like the Excel spreadsheet. Perfect. Beautiful.
Perfect. I'm happy to hear that. So we have design. This is going to be the, colors, style like that of the invoice. And then we have the content. And the content is broken into 3 different sections. You have your header, which is going to be your company information and what you want the customer to see when they first look at it. If they want to see the invoice listed, the number, if you have custom fields, this is a landscaping company, so it does crew number as the custom field. But you can modify that maybe for, in your instance, Delilah, maybe you would have a student's name, something like that. Okay, then you have the activity, the actual what you're invoicing for. So the product and service that you are selling, if there's a service date associated with that, and then a description, quantity, rate, and amount.
Question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, can we also add fields to the invoice columns?
You can. You have, let's see, more activity options here. What would you want to add?
So I would add the date, the code. So I would have to add the type of monolingual or bilingual, so the type of language, the specific code for service eligibility code, and then the state code. So I would need to add 3 columns.
So what I would probably do, I would probably use the code that you're invoicing against, like I don't think it's the state code. I'm trying to think of it the same thing as like a medical billing, or like I work with a psychiatrist who does the billing by the coding too.
So you're familiar with ICD-10, CPT codes?
Yeah, those would be
Yeah.
the activity codes, what you're
Okay.
actually invoicing for. Then
Gotcha.
you can use the description fields maybe for, I don't know if you're able to add many columns. Let's see.
It says edit labels and widths up top, right there.
Well, you can change what these
that's
are called. You
Okay.
like, I would change the activity probably to CPT code, and then maybe leave the description as description, and then put in the state code, or
Okay, the baby's name,
but-
and then the quantity could be the eligibility code.
well, you don't want to do that, because the quantity is going to, you multiply the
Fixed.
quantity times the rate equals the amount. So you might want to maybe include SKU. You would have to use the ARI template, but you could include like that another field. But you can play around with this, like playing with this similar with the reports. It's not going to break QuickBooks. There's no way.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
No problem. How do you save the customized invoice and delete the others? I'm not sure where you delete the other templates. That's a question in the chat. I have an idea of where they are, but I'll go there in just a second. And then down here at the bottom, this is called your footer. This is going to be the message that you're sending to your customer if you want to include one, as well as what the total due is, discounts, and so on. And then lastly, up here at the top, you have emails. Now, if you have your customers' emails in their QuickBooks file, in your QuickBooks file, in their customer profile, then you can send an email to them directly from QuickBooks. So this would be, you could set up a generic email. So this is your invoice, please remit payment, and so on. And then you'll have a PDF copy of the invoice you just generated. The nice thing about this, about the email, is although it might be a generic email that goes out or that you set up, you do have the ability, before you send out any invoice to any of your customers, this is going to pop up, say this is what's going to go out to your customer. You can always modify it. If you wanted to include an additional note, maybe the holidays are coming up, happy holidays, something like that. Like you can include an additional message, modify that message that's going out to your customer without modifying the template for it. Any questions on that? Great.
Yes, I'm sorry, Christine.
That's okay.
Just want to go back to the, formulating the invoice. As it relates to activity, description, the only areas you have to hard code and set up in QuickBooks certain categories. So when you're selecting a customer or a vendor to pay, you can select these categories that pertain to that particular customer or vendor.
Correct.
The only areas you can now edit is the quantity and the dollar amounts, and I guess the dates.
Yes, yes, and the description. So
and the description, right? The description.
Yeah. Let's get into. So this is just customizing the invoice before it goes out, but let's actually create an invoice to our customer. So let's say we're done here. It's loading. Okay, so in my upper left corner, so invoices function a little bit different than every other transaction in QuickBooks. And that's because every other transaction we've put in QuickBooks has used an account or a category. On invoices, we sell our customers products and services. We create our products and services and link them to specific accounts or income accounts. More likely than not, it's income accounts. The reason we do this is because when we send invoices out to our customers, we don't want them to see sales or consulting services or design services or something like that. We want them to see, or maybe we do want them to see that. I mean, we don't want them to see sales or sale of product income or something like that. You want them to see what they're actually paying for, the product that they purchased, the goods that you sold them, the consulting services you did for them. They don't want to see your income account. They don't want to see your chart of accounts. So that's why we use products and services versus using a an item from your chart of accounts. So up in the upper left corner, we have customer, and I'm going to select Amy's Bird Sanctuary. And the reason I'm selecting that one is because I know earlier today, remember we were talking about billing back our expenses, like getting reimbursed from customers for travel expenses, things like that, how we tag transactions in our bank feeds. As soon as I typed in Amy's Bird Sanctuary and QuickBooks recognized it, I got a pop-up along the right side of my screen that says billable expenses. I have billable time and I have billable expense. So my billable expense, this is what I added from my bank feed. $1,200 to A1 rental. I want to charge Amy's Bird Sanctuary for this. Because we kind of just use it as an example, I'm going to leave it for a future invoice. But every time I go to create an invoice for Amy's Bird Sanctuary, I'm going to be reminded, hey, you have this $1,200 to invoice to Amy. Do you want to do it now or do you want to hold off? So this is where those unbilled reimbursable expenses, if let's say you do get reimbursed for from one of your clients for travel, you don't want to invoice it maybe every invoice you create for them, but maybe you send them one invoice at the end of a month or the end of a quarter or something saying these are all of the expenses I've incurred for this period. So I'm just going to hide that along the side. I just kind of wanted to give you that extra detail. So I have my customer, Amy's Bird Sanctuary. I have her email included here. My terms, same thing with the vendor side, net 30. My due date and invoice date, my invoice date is September 15th. My due date is 30 days after that invoice date. Now let's talk about the actual activity, what we're invoicing to our customer. So we can include here a service date, if we'd like, if let's say you are, doing teaching or some kind of tutoring, something along those lines, you can put a service date here. And then we put our product and service. So now we're going to create our first service. So just to make it nice and easy, we're going to do consulting services. Okay. So we have consulting services, similar to every other transaction. When we create something new, we get this gray box that says add. So we're going to select that option too. And now we have our different product and service types. Now, we're going to set up a service, but I'm going to go through what inventory, non-inventory, and a bundle is for you. Inventory is products that you buy and sell that you want to maintain account of. You want to know the actual amount that you have on hand at any given time. It's actually tracking, I have, let's say I sold chairs. I have X number of chairs in my warehouse. You want to track that for inventory. We do not talk about inventory really much in this workshop because inventory could be quite a beast. And the reason I say that is because we might have 10 chairs sitting in our warehouse, but how did those chairs get there? That's tracking, did I purchase the one chair and then sell that one chair? Did I purchase the wood for it and then build it and put it there? So there's a lot of pieces when it comes to inventory. But it all relates to tracking and wanting to know what you have at a particular moment. Now we have non-inventory. So non-inventory is products that you buy or sell that you don't need to keep account of. So let's say or the benefit of knowing how much you have outweighs the cost, the cost of maintaining that count outweighs the benefit. So something like non-inventory, let's go with the chair example again. I use nails to put together my chair. I purchase nails just in boxes and I don't care how many I have on hand, just know that I have them. That would be a non-inventory part that would just be a product that I buy that I don't care to maintain a quantity account of. Services would be services that you provide to clients. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then you have a bundle, and a bundle is a collection of the other three types. It could be multiple inventory items, multiple service items, multiple non-inventory, and so on. But for ease of setting it up, we're just going to use service. Here we can include a SKU, a picture, And this section here is the only place in which the category and account are not interchangeable in QuickBooks. You can create categories for your specific products and services that you sell. Those do not relate to your chart of accounts. It's the only place in the file that this happens. Okay, if I scroll down, we have description on sales form. So let's say I just say, I always want it to, because I don't want to type it every time, consulting services regarding, and then I leave it blank for me to type in whatever I need to when I go to create my invoice. If I have a specific sales rate, a sales price or rate associated with this item, it's always going to be this amount. Let's say it's $100. And then what income account it relates to. So I sell consulting services. I want that income account to be services. If I was doing an invoice for selling chairs, I'd want my income account to be sale of product income, or maybe just sales, something like that.
What if you have a rental business, like you rent out apartments?
Probably rental income. You would probably have your item would be monthly rent or rental, something like that. And then your income account would be rental income.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then you would have to determine if your product or service is taxable or not. In New York State, services 99% of the time are not taxable. Just for showing you how to set up sales tax quickly, I'm going to leave this as a taxable product or service, but sales tax is super complicated. I would recommend talking to your accountant about that if you're not sure, just because it's different by the county, the city, the state, everything that you live in and what you do and sell with that product. Okay. So I'm going to hit save and close here. Here I have my consulting services regarding my description automatically populated, as did my rate. So let's say I have consulting services regarding training, just to keep it nice and easy. And let's say it was 2 hours at a rate of $100 an hour, gives me my dollar amount of $200. Keep going down. We have our subtotal of $200. Our taxable amount, because this is the only item we have here that's marked as taxed, $200, and our sales tax rate. Intuit is based out of California, which gives us our 8% sales tax. But if we wanted to create one for New York, we just simply use this drop down, select the option to add new. We'll do a single tax rate for New York City. I'll say New York State Department of Tax and Finance for 8.875%, and then save. That tax is automatically calculated for me. My balance due is $217.75, and I can hit save and send to send out to my customer. Does anybody have any questions on that?
When you save and send, does it actually send it?
It will. This is a sample file, so it's going to tell me that it's not going to, but just so you could see what it looks like. As I said, it's going to give you the from email. This is your email, that's your login, or you can set it in your settings, what email it comes from. Gives you who you're sending it to, and then gives you the ability to modify the invoice. It also gives you the PDF printout or PDF preview of what your customer is going to receive.
Where in QuickBooks do I go to verify what has been sent already?
So I would hit and close. So on this invoice, you can't send an email from a file like this. On an invoice, there's going to be history listed. I believe it's down here at the bottom, like around this section of your invoice. When it was sent out, when they opened it, like it gives you all of the detail related to the invoice, but it's literally listed on the invoice. I believe it's also under the customer profile, there's sent emails. I know that it is for sure in desktop. But there is a history on it on the actual transaction itself. Yeah.
They're not doing any of the balls.
Okay, so now let's go into receiving a payment. Oh, we have 7 minutes left, so let's kind of go through this a little quickly. We have reports. Similar to the accounts payable aging, we have the accounts receivable aging. Amy's Bird Sanctuary is right at the top. So I see the total amount that she owes me. She has 2 invoices that are outstanding. If I click on the total amount that's due, QuickBooks is going to give me the detail of both of those invoices, the amount that's due and what the open balance is. She's already paid part of this top one. So when I receive payment, I'm just gonna. So when I receive payment from Amy, I can either do it from within an invoice or click on new and then receive payment. Type in her name. And then the dollar amount that she's given me. So in this screen, if you receive a post-dated check from a customer, you're going to want to include the date that they put on their payment. Then you can't deposit that check until that date, correct? I believe that that's how that works. So you would put in the payment date that they intended to pay it. You would put in their payment method. So let's say they paid you with check, and you would put in a reference number. We're going to deposit to undeposited funds because that's relates to those transactions that I told you to ignore earlier. And then we put in the amount that's received. So let's say she paid us $217.75. She paid us for this bottom invoice. As soon as you type in that amount received, QuickBooks does one of 2 things. If this amount matches an open balance, it's automatically going to apply it to that invoice. If it does not automatically match, it's going to allocate the payment between the 2, allocating the balance to the oldest first, and then whatever's left over to the other invoice. Then I select save and close. Okay, so now that check is sitting in undeposited funds. Undeposited funds is like a lockbox. To bring that check to the bank, we select new, and under other, select bank deposit. Now here, these are the transactions I told you to ignore before. These are your undeposited funds. So undeposited funds is very handy if you have a lot of checks or a lot of payments coming in from your customers that all clear in one deposit. So you want to make sure all of their invoices in QuickBooks are marked as paid, close them out, and then you select off all of the individual payments that make up one deposit. So let's say all 3 of these get deposited at one time. My total deposit is going to be for $2,200. And then we can select the option to save and close. Now, this is also similar to when you get payments from a credit card processor. What's important to note there is when you receive those payments from a credit card processor, you know that you're going to have a fee associated with that. So you want to make sure you have actually all these invoices closed out, and do the same thing we had talked about earlier with the bank charges, and then minus whatever the fee is. Because that'll close out all the individual balances from our customers. None of them are going to show a random little $25 or whatever balance that's associated. And then you have all the payments recorded, all invoices closed, and then the credit card fee that you've paid. Let me delete that. Does anybody have questions on that?
Now, when I normally do the receipt of payments, I go to invoice, and I do next to the invoice number that is already set up in QuickBooks, I click on that on the right hand to say receive payment. It brings me to the receive payment panel where that invoice is checked off for the exact
So
amount
if
of the
let's say we went into this invoice, right? This balance has a $239.
Yes.
You click on this receive payment and it brings you to the same screen.
Right. And then I just go enter the check date, the check number, and all the other detail that it asked me for, and I accept and save.
Yep. It's the same idea. Whenever you're in a transaction and hit to do the next thing, receive a payment, or if you're in a customer profile and you go to create an invoice, it's going to automatically pull that last thing, like that invoice. It's automatically going to check that one off because you initiated a payment from that invoice. Okay.
My question is, how does that tie into the deposit process?
So it would tie into the deposit process just like what we had just done. So this goes to, let's receive payment. If this was one deposit, I received one deposit for $239, I would select the deposit to, and I would select my checking account. But if it's part of a larger deposit, there's multiple transactions in there, it's multiple checks in one deposit, I want to use undeposited funds. That's like my lockbox where I'm putting the checks before they go to the bank. So I would then select new and then bank deposit. And those checks that are in my lockbox are all going to be listed here. So this is where you bring that check payment to the bank balance and put it here.
Christine, can I ask you about like, okay, so I understand about like raising invoices and like moving over the money, receiving payments. And it's the same thing with bills. Like you make a payment for the bills, but there's no purchase orders here, right? In this online module?
There is vendors and then purchase orders. You do have the ability to create purchase orders.
So we
Purchase orders are typically an inventory related transaction. So that's why I didn't cover it here, but you can create purchase orders in QuickBooks.
Yeah. Okay, and do you recommend any apps for inventory or anything like an online edit, an extension, an app like you said?
For inventory, there are multiple apps out there. SOS Inventory is probably one of the most popular ones that connects with online. Fishbowl is another popular one. I think Fishbowl is a bit more expensive than SOS though.
Okay, thank you.
So Christine, I got so many questions for you. I would love to, spend the 4 hours is not enough.
Yeah.
We need to tap into your wealth of knowledge.
I really think that we had a great group today because I've got so many questions and I really feel like everyone was engaged, which was very nice. So I definitely appreciate it. So, and I like having all the questions. It makes it move fast for me.
Oh yes, you are excellent. You're wonderful.
Thank you very much.
For the time frame that you had to deal with, you maximize it to the best of your ability.
Thank you so much.
I gave you my email. I would love to get some information from you to see how we can continue with this discussion and securing your services.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So right after this, I'll send an email to everybody who included it in the chat. And I'm actually going to hand it back to Kendra now. Let me go back to that PowerPoint. It's just to end on a little bit on score. If my computer wants to cooperate with me today.
Yeah, hi Kendra, we see you.
Just a couple closing slides. The main thing to know is that if you have questions, you can always reach out to a SCORE mentor. We have a lot of mentors with a background in finance and accounting. So just so you know, we can advise you on things. We can provide guidance. So that is a resource for you. To get our mentor, you would simply go to our website, newyorkcity.score.org. All of our services for mentoring are free. On this slide, you can see Get Started, Request a Mentor. You would just click that button, fill out a form that takes 2 to 3 minutes to fill out, and then we'd hook you up with a mentor in about 48 hours. Right now, due to COVID, again, all of our mentoring is being done via video. And I also highlighted on the slide the Take a Webinar button. That's where you can always find the latest list of upcoming webinars. Next slide. So as a follow-up to the session, we are going to send you these slides, and the webinar recording, because I know you're going to want to refresh your knowledge. So you will have that webinar recording. We have already sent you a webinar survey. You'll find that in your email box right now. Please take a moment to fill it out, because it lets us know what was effective, what worked, were there things we could have done to make it more effective, all of that stuff. And then you can also suggest future webinar topics. Are there needs you have that we're not offering a webinar on yet? Let us know, and we, if we have demand, we will start to set up those webinars as well. So fill out the webinar survey, please. It should just take a minute. And with that, we'll just do the final slide, which is thank you, everybody, for spending time with Kristen today. And we are so glad that you came, that you asked your questions, that you clearly had a very rich experience and got a lot out of it. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great one, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Christine. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank
Kristen,
you.
thank you so much for your help. I appreciate it. Thank you
Of
very much.
course.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank
Have a good day.
Thank you, Kristen. I'll contact you for consulting.
That sounds great.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can copy this whole chat.
And likewise, I would definitely contact you for consulting too, Christine.
Andrew, I
Thank
sent you a message if you were interested, if we could take lessons together. Did you read your chat, Andrew?
Oh, not yet. I didn't. Okay.
Let's see.
Let
I
me.
can copy and paste the whole chat.
Okay.
I'm just
Yes.
not ending the meeting yet because
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I can copy everybody's email information here. Yes, got it. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Awesome.
So
Thank you.
Andrew, would you like to take classes together with
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
So can I
Yes,
get your
Jasmine.
email? Can you
Yeah.
write it down in the chat?
Okay. I'll do that right now.
Give me 1 minute, Christine.
Okay, take your time.
I have it right here. Let me just copy it over.
So do you like online more than the desktop, right? Because now I've been
Yes.
considering options of, like they use a server for the desktop, but that's not good, right?
I
No.
mean, it depends. I personally like QuickBooks Online better. I know that people who have been using QuickBooks for years and are familiar with the desktop don't want to give that up, which I understand that too. I mean, I work in an office with all accountants who prefer the desktop over QuickBooks Online, but by nature, accountants don't really like much change. So
Right.
they like staying on the desktop version versus going to the online.
Okay.
So
Justin, did you get my email information?
No, I didn't actually.
I just saved it to you.
I didn't. Did you put it to everyone or just to me?
Just to you.
No, I didn't get it. Sorry.
Okay.
Can we
Yeah,
just
I
put it to everyone, like in the main
okay.
chat?
Okay, let me do that. All right, I did it. I saved it to everyone.
Oh, I didn't get it. Oh, can I give you mine?
Yes, yes, you can.
Okay, I gave you mine, so you have to email me because I didn't get yours.
Okay, I will. No problem.
Sorry, Christine. Sorry about
That's-
that.
Yes.
sorry. Well, good timing because now my light's all coming in through my window. You can't see me.
Oh, you're
see-
looking so
I see that.
nice. You look like an angel, like
She
you have a
does.
halo. Okay,
That is
thank
so
you,
true.
Christine.
Thank
No
you,
problem.
Jasmine. All the
Okay,
best to
take
you,
care.
and I'll email you all the information I have. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Christina. Thanks. Bye-bye.